Oceans hold more forgotten history than all the world's museums combined. We are about to journey through time to uncover 50 lost maritime civilizations of prehistory. These were not just cities by the sea, but entire cultures built on seafaring, trade, and a deep connection to the water, societies that flourished and then vanished, often without a clear trace. Their stories are history's greatest nautical puzzles, and by the end of this exploration, you will possess a map to a hidden world you never knew existed. We will investigate sunken cities swallowed in a single night and search for phantom islands that evaded explorers for centuries. What forgotten world do you hope we discover first? The legend of Dwarka feels less like a story and more like a memory. Ancient Hindu texts describe a magnificent city built by the divine Lord Krishna, a city of gold, silver, and emeralds with grand avenues and countless palaces. It was a beacon of power and prosperity, a kingdom founded upon principles of justice. Yet the scriptures hold a tragic ending, stating that upon Krishna's death, the vast city was swallowed by the sea, vanishing in a single cataclysm. For centuries, this was considered pure mythology, a beautiful allegory with no basis in physical reality. But what if the waves have been guarding a secret all this time? Just off the coast of modern-day Gujarat, India, marine archaeologists made a discovery that sent ripples through the historical community. They found the remains of a sprawling submerged settlement. Massive stone structures, some weighing many tons, lie on the seabed. They recovered ancient stone anchors, the kind used by large seafaring vessels, and a wealth of pottery shards. Scientific analysis suggests these artifacts could be thousands of years old, potentially aligning with the legendary timeline of Dwarka. This is where the line between myth and history truly blurs. If this sunken city is indeed the Dwarka of legend, it forces a dramatic rewrite of ancient Indian history. It would mean that sophisticated urban planning and advanced maritime engineering existed on a scale we never previously documented. Imagine a civilization capable of building a metropolis that could trade across oceans, its ships carrying goods and ideas to distant shores long before recorded history. The debate is far from settled, of course. Are we looking at the physical proof of a spiritual tale? Or is the discovery a separate, equally impressive lost city that later inspired the legend? Either way, the sunken stones off Gujarat's coast whisper a compelling challenge, asking us how many other myths might be waiting just beneath the waves. Far from the shores of India, another maritime mystery sleeps beneath the Mediterranean sun. The Minoans of Crete built Europe's first great seafaring empire, a civilization so advanced it feels almost out of place in the ancient world. Their power was not held by vast armies on land, but by the strength of their wooden ships and the skill of their sailors upon the sea. They were a thalassocracy, a word meaning a kingdom defined by its rule over the water. Their influence stretched across the Aegean, a web of trade and culture connecting islands and coasts. At the heart of this nautical empire stood the breathtaking palace of Knossos, a complex so vast and labyrinthine it later inspired the legend of the Minotaur. Walking through its reconstructed corridors today, you are surrounded by vibrant frescoes. These are not scenes of war and conquest, but of daily life and the sea itself. Dolphins leap across wet plaster, young athletes vault over bulls, and elegant processions hint at a sophisticated, peaceful society. Yet their voice remains just out of reach, locked within the symbols of their writing system, Linear A. This script, found on clay tablets throughout their realm, has stubbornly resisted all attempts at translation. We can see their records, their inventories, their communications, but we cannot hear the words they spoke. This silence makes their sudden collapse all the more haunting. Around the year 1600 before the Common Era, the nearby island of Thera, now known as Santorini, was torn apart by one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in human history. The explosion was cataclysmic, ejecting cubic miles of rock and ash into the sky. But for the Minoans, the real devastation likely came from the sea. The eruption would have generated tsunamis of unimaginable power, colossal walls of water racing across the Aegean to smash into the northern coast of Crete. Their fleet, the very source of their wealth and power, would have been utterly destroyed in its harbors. The ashfall would have blotted out the sun for years, choking agriculture and collapsing their economy. Did this single natural disaster fatally wound their civilization, leaving them vulnerable to invasion from the mainland Mycenaeans? Or was it a slower decline, a slow fading of their culture under the weight of environmental and political pressures? The silent stones of Knossos and the undeciphered linear tablets hold the answer, a secret kept for 3,600 years. The silent mystery of the Minoans stands in stark contrast to a civilization defined by its thunderous arrival in the historical record. Ancient Egyptian temple walls tell a story of a sudden, terrifying threat emerging from the open ocean. These carvings depict a confederation of warriors they simply called the Sea Peoples. They are shown not in orderly phalanxes, but in chaotic naval battles, their ships distinct from Egyptian vessels, their helmets often crowned with strange plumes or horns. Inscriptions from the reigns of pharaohs like Ramesses III describe a desperate, existential fight for survival. He boasts of repelling these invaders from the sea, saving Egypt from utter annihilation when so many other great kingdoms fell. And fall they did. The era of the Sea Peoples coincides almost perfectly with the late Bronze Age collapse, a period of breathtaking societal unraveling around 1200 before the Common Era. In a remarkably short time, the grand palaces of the Hittite Empire were burned to the ground. The mighty city-states of Ugarit and Mycenae were abandoned. A dark age descended across the eastern Mediterranean, extinguishing literacy, complex trade networks, and centralized power for centuries. The Sea Peoples are often cast as the primary cause of this cataclysm, a wave of destruction that washed away the old world. But who were they, and where did they come from? This is where the mystery deepens into a historical detective story with no clear culprit. The Egyptians, who documented their battles so meticulously, never told us their homeland. They only gave names to the different groups within the Confederation, names like the Peliset, the Sherden, and the Shekelesh. For generations, scholars have tried to match these names to known places. Were the Peliset the Philistines who later settled on the coast of Canaan? Could the Sherden have come from the island of Sardinia and the Shekelesh from Sicily? Other theories point to the fractured world of the Aegean in the wake of the Mycenaean collapse, suggesting the Sea Peoples were a desperate mix of displaced warriors, pirates, and refugees, a domino effect of migrating populations crashing into the established empires. Were they the cause of the collapse, or were they its product, a symptom of a world already coming apart at the seams? Perhaps they were both, a storm of human movement that finally broke a system already strained by climate change, famine, and internal rebellion. Their true origin remains one of history's greatest cold cases, a phantom homeland lost to the very chaos they are accused of creating. While the Sea Peoples left a trail of fire and ruins, another civilization chose a different path to obscurity, fading not with a bang but a whisper. In the sun-drenched marshes of southern Spain, at the very edge of the known ancient world, lies the ghost of a kingdom called Tartessos. Greek and biblical texts speak of it with awe, a land of staggering wealth ruled by a king named Arganthonios, whose name literally means the Silver One. He was said to be impossibly old and fabulously rich, his wealth flowing from mines of silver and other precious metals. For the merchant sailors of Phoenicia, Tartessos was a legendary trading partner, a source of the metals that fueled economies across the Mediterranean. They exchanged luxury goods and knowledge for this raw wealth, and for a time Tartessos thrived as a cultural crossroads. Yet this wealthy, sophisticated society did not just decline, it seemingly evaporated from the historical record. The central mystery is not just its disappearance, but the location of its very heart. Where was the capital city of this lost civilization? For decades, the prime suspect has been the vast, watery landscape of the Guadalquivir River Delta. This is a land of marshes and shifting sediments, a place where the earth itself can swallow the past. Archaeologists have uncovered tantalizing clues here, including a spectacular gold treasure hoard found at a site called El Carambolo. The intricate jewelry, with its otherworldly designs, points to a culture that blended local traditions with strong influences from their Phoenician trading partners. But where is the great city itself, the seat of King Arganthonios? The search continues, with some researchers proposing that the capital was not a single, static city, but a network of settlements spread across the wetland, a fluid kingdom adapted to its riverine environment. This theory suggests its demise was equally fluid, a slow unraveling caused by a combination of factors. Perhaps the very trade that built its fortune became its undoing as new sea routes bypassed its ports. Or maybe environmental change played the final hand, with the silting of its harbors or a series of catastrophic floods literally drowning its economic base. The civilization did not march away, it simply receded back into the marshes from which it came, its people assimilating into other cultures until only the legend of its Silver King remained. Tartessos represents a different kind of loss, a quiet exit that is in some ways more haunting than a violent end. It asks us whether a civilization can be so thoroughly reclaimed by the land that it becomes a story, its truth waiting just beneath the mud and reeds for a shovel to prove the poets right. The silent exit of Tartessos stands in stark contrast to a loss of land so vast it reshaped an entire continent. Before Great Britain was an island, it was a peninsula. A sprawling, low-lying plain known as Doggerland stretched from the east coast of England all the way to the Netherlands and Denmark. This was not a narrow land bridge, but a territory larger than many modern European countries, a verdant landscape of hills, forests, marshes, and lagoons. For thousands of years after the last ice age, it was home to Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who tracked herds of mammoth and deer across its rich grasslands. The evidence for this lost world does not come from crumbling temples, but from the cold, dark floor of the North Sea. Fishing trawlers have, for generations, been hauling up an unexpected bounty from their nets. Alongside their catch, they pull up ancient bones, both animal and human, as well as finely crafted flint tools and weaponry. These artifacts, dredged from the seabed, tell a clear story. This was not an empty corridor, but a heartland, a thriving ecosystem that supported a human population for millennia. The end of Doggerland was not a single event, but a slow, inexorable process. As the global climate warmed, glaciers melted, and sea levels began a relentless rise, inch by inch, century by century. The rising waters slowly swallowed the coastal forests and lowlands, forcing the human inhabitants to retreat again and again to ever-shrinking higher ground. The people of Doggerland were living a slow-motion disaster, a gradual drowning of their entire world. Then, around 6,150 before the Common Era, a final, catastrophic blow fell. Off the coast of Norway, a massive section of the continental shelf, known as the Storegga Slide, collapsed into the deep sea. This underwater landslide, one of the largest ever known, triggered a devastating tsunami. A colossal wall of water, perhaps as high as a 5-story building, raced across the North Sea. It would have smashed into the remaining islands of Doggerland with unimaginable force, scouring the landscape and wiping out any remaining communities in an instant. What had been a slow retreat became a final, brutal severance. The British Isles were cut off from the European mainland, their geography permanently altered. The loss of Doggerland was more than the sinking of a landmass. It was the destruction of an entire chapter of human prehistory, a cultural and genetic highway that vanished beneath the waves. It forces us to ask a profound question. How many other heartlands of early human expansion now lie at the bottom of the sea, their stories silenced by the rising tides? Beneath the clear, blue currents off Japan's southernmost island lies a puzzle carved in stone. The Yonaguni Monument is a massive, terraced structure that descends into the ocean depths, its sharp angles and flat platforms looking unnaturally geometric. Since its discovery by a diver in the 1980s, it has ignited a fierce debate that cuts to the very core of our understanding of the ancient Pacific. Is this the sunken plaza of a lost civilization, or simply a spectacular trick of nature? Those who argue for its man-made origins point to features that seem too precise to be accidental. They highlight the two immense monolithic pillars that appear purposefully placed. They note the perfectly sharp 90-degree angles where rock faces meet, and the series of wide, flat terraces that resemble a ceremonial staircase. One of the most compelling features is a long, straight trench that runs alongside the main structure, a channel that looks as if it was carved by intelligent hands. If these features are artificial, the scale is staggering, suggesting a project requiring immense communal effort and sophisticated stoneworking knowledge. The implications would be revolutionary. It would mean that a complex society capable of monumental architecture existed in this region at a time when mainstream history suggests only small, hunter-gatherer communities inhabited these islands. This would not just be a lost city, but a lost chapter in human cultural development, potentially connected to other Pacific legends of sunken lands. Opposing this view is the powerful force of natural geology. Skeptics, including many geologists, explain that the Yonaguni Formation is made of sandstone, a rock prone to fracturing along straight lines and plains. The same natural processes that create the flat faces of a quarry can occur in the ocean. The constant pounding of waves, the subtle shifts of tectonic plates, and the relentless weathering from salt water can all conspire to create surprisingly regular shapes. They argue that the entire monument is a beautiful example of what is known as sheet jointing and marine erosion, a purely natural wonder that our pattern-seeking brains interpret as architecture. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a possibility that some researchers cautiously entertain. Perhaps the site began as a natural geological formation, but was later modified and enhanced by ancient peoples, turned into a sacred space or a functional platform by a culture that saw its potential. Dating the structure is a challenge that only deepens the mystery. Unlike a buried city where artifacts can be carbon dated, the Yonaguni Monument offers no such clear clues. Scientists can only date the last time the rock was above water by analyzing sea level changes. This method suggests the structure would have been on dry land during the last ice age over 10,000 years ago. If human hands did shape it, the work would have had to be done in that distant epoch, pushing the timeline for advanced civilization in the region back by thousands of years. The debate over Yonaguni is more than an academic argument. It is a struggle over the map of human possibility. Are we looking at the ruins of a forgotten world, or are we seeing the profound artistry of random chance, a masterpiece sculpted by time, tide, and stone? The geometric enigma of Yonaguni feels like a tangible piece of a much larger, more ethereal puzzle. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, another lost world has captured the human imagination for over a century, a place known as the lost continent of Mu. In the late 1800s, a writer and adventurer named Augustus Le Plongeon wove an elaborate tapestry from ancient myths. He proposed that a massive continent, a cradle of civilization called Mu, once dominated the Pacific. According to his theory, this advanced mother culture was the source for all other ancient societies, from the Maya to the Egyptians, before it sank beneath the waves in a single, terrible cataclysm. His ideas were captivating, a grand unified theory for human history lost to the sea. This was not the only such story. Around the same time, the scientific community was grappling with its own phantom land, Lemuria. Biologists had noticed a perplexing similarity between certain fossils and living species in India and Madagascar. To explain this distribution across a vast ocean, they theorized a land bridge, a lost continent they named Lemuria that had supposedly sunk, allowing ancient animals to migrate. Both Mu and Lemuria were born from a genuine desire to solve a mystery, to explain the undeniable cultural and biological echoes that ripple across the scattered islands of the Pacific. How could similar plants, animals, and foundational myths appear in places separated by thousands of miles of open ocean? For a time, a sunken continent seemed like the only logical answer. The modern science of plate tectonics, however, has thoroughly dismantled these beautiful ideas. We now understand that the Earth's crust is made of massive, shifting plates, not continents that can simply vanish into the deep abyss. The geology of the Pacific Basin is clear. It is composed of dense oceanic crust that is far too heavy to have ever supported a vast, buoyant continent like those we have today. The real story of the Pacific is not one of a sudden loss, but of a slow, courageous expansion. The similarities that inspired the legends of Mu are not the ghosts of a drowned world, but the legacy of the greatest seafarers in human history. The Polynesians, using only their profound knowledge of the stars, the waves, and the flight of birds, intentionally and methodically explored and settled this immense ocean over thousands of years. They carried their cultures, their plants, and their animals with them in great double-hulled canoes, creating the connected world that later generations would mistake for a sunken empire. The lost continent of Mu was a compelling answer to the wrong question. The true wonder is not a land that disappeared, but the breathtaking human achievement that filled the greatest ocean on Earth. The legends of Mu and Lemuria were born from a longing to explain the Pacific's mysteries, but the Indian Ocean holds a sunken city whose story was never truly lost. It was preserved in poetry. For 2,000 years, the Tamil people of southern India have passed down the epic poems of the Sangam literature, which sing of a magnificent port city named Pumpuhar. These are not vague myths, but vivid accounts of a bustling, wealthy capital, a place where merchants traded pearls, silk, and spices with ships from distant empires. The poems describe a city of great beauty with a king's palace, a bustling marketplace, and even a street where the Yavana or Greek traders resided. Yet the verses also carry a deep sorrow, telling of a day when the sea, enraged, rose up and swallowed the city whole, leaving only the memories etched in song. For centuries, this was considered a powerful allegory, a poetic metaphor for the rise and fall of fortunes. But what if the poets were not just storytellers, but historians? Marine archaeologists working off the coast of modern-day Tamil Nadu began to search the seabed for any trace that might connect the legend to the land, or rather to the water. Their discoveries were stunning. They found the remains of a vast submerged settlement, a sunken landscape stretching for miles. Below the waves lay the foundations of ancient structures, including what appears to be a temple complex and a network of walls. Most tellingly, they recovered huge quantities of pottery shards, some dating back over 2,000 years, precisely the era described in the Sangam poems. They also found ancient brick walls and stone structures that showed clear signs of human craftsmanship, now encrusted with marine life. These are not random geological formations, they are the physical remnants of a once great urban center. The evidence on the seafloor presents a compelling case that the literary Pumpuhar was a real, thriving maritime metropolis, but what could have caused its downfall? The poems speak of a catastrophic flood, and geology offers a terrifyingly plausible scenario. This region of the Indian coast sits near a volatile undersea fault line. A massive earthquake followed by a tsunami could have easily inundated the low-lying city, dragging its grand avenues and harbors into the sea in a single violent event. Alternatively, a slower process of rising sea levels, perhaps exacerbated by land subsidence, could have gradually reclaimed the city, forcing its inhabitants to abandon it over generations. The submerged ruins of Pumpuha stand as a powerful testament, a place where ancient literature and modern archaeology converge to prove that some of our oldest stories are not merely legends, but eyewitness accounts written in verse waiting for us to listen. While the poets of Tamil Nadu sang of a city lost to the sea, another great port met its end not by water but by earth. The kingdom of Axum, a powerhouse of ancient Africa, controlled a vast network of trade that stretched from the interior highlands to the Red Sea coast. Its primary maritime gateway was the bustling port of Adulis, a city that served as the crucial link between two worlds. Here, the riches of the Roman Empire, glassware, wine, and fine textiles were exchanged for the exotic goods of India and beyond, including spices, silk, and precious gems. Adulis was the engine of Aksumite prosperity, a cosmopolitan hub where diverse cultures and languages mingled on its docks, funneling immense wealth inland to the capital's famous stone obelisk. For centuries, this port was a name on every merchant's map, a vital node in the global economy of its time. Yet today, its exact location lies obscured, its grandeur buried under layers of silent sediment. The mystery of its decline is a slow burn puzzle. Unlike a city shattered by a tsunami, Adulis likely succumbed to a more gradual enemy. The very river that gave it life, the Hatters, may have ultimately been its undoing. Over time, the river would have carried down silt from the highlands, slowly choking the harbor. Imagine the frustration of merchants as their deep-drafted ships could no longer reach the wharves, the lifeblood of trade slowly constricting. Compounding this, the geopolitical landscape shifted. New trade routes emerged, bypassing Adulis and leaving it economically isolated. Some theories also suggest that environmental changes, perhaps a trend toward arid conditions, disrupted the agricultural base that supported the city's population. Adulis did not vanish in a day, it was slowly strangled, its people gradually abandoning a port that the world had left behind. The sands and silt that now cover its ruins are a testament to a different kind of maritime loss, one where the sea did not rise up, but the land reached out to reclaim its own. The slow economic death of Adulis stands in stark contrast to a cataclysm of almost biblical proportions. Deep beneath the dark, anoxic waters of the Black Sea lies a secret that may rewrite the story of human migration in the ancient world. For much of its history, the Black Sea was not a sea at all, but a vast freshwater lake, lying hundreds of feet below the level of the global ocean. Its shores were a fertile paradise for early Neolithic farmers, a lush landscape where some of Europe's first agricultural communities could have thrived. Then, around 5,600 before the Common Era, a geological drama unfolded that would have been terrifying to witness. As the last ice age receded and world sea levels rose, the Mediterranean Sea finally broke through the natural dam that is now the Bosporus Strait. What began as a trickle became a torrent and then a cataclysm. A colossal waterfall, 200 times more powerful than Niagara Falls, is estimated to have roared into the Black Sea basin. The lake's water level rose relentlessly, perhaps as much as 6 inches per day, its shoreline advancing a mile every few weeks. This was not a slow, creeping flood, but a violent, rapid invasion of saltwater that would have drowned the entire basin in less than a year. Any human settlements along the ancient shoreline were swallowed forever, their world transformed from a fertile valley into an abyssal plain in a single lifetime. Is this the scientific truth behind the universal myth of a great flood? The story of a world drowned by water exists in countless cultures, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Book of Genesis. Could this Black Sea deluge be the common, traumatic memory passed down for generations? The quest for proof led renowned oceanographer Robert Ballard, famous for finding the Titanic, to the depths of the Black Sea. His team made a series of stunning discoveries. Using advanced sonar and submersibles, they mapped an ancient shoreline nearly 400 feet below the current surface, complete with a buried river canyon and coastal features like drowned waterfalls. Even more compelling, they brought up physical evidence from this sunken landscape, including the shells of freshwater mollusks that were carbon dated to around 7,000 years ago. These creatures could not have lived in the salty water of the modern Black Sea, proving conclusively that this was once a freshwater lake that was rapidly flooded. The most tantalizing finds are potential structures, including a wooden beam and stone tools recovered from the deep, suggesting human activity on that once fertile coast. The debate now centers on the scale and speed of the event. Was it a single dramatic rupture that caused a year of terror or a series of pulses over centuries? Did it force a mass migration of early farmers into Europe, carrying their agricultural knowledge and their flood stories with them? The sunken cities of the Black Sea may not be built of stone, but of memory, a lost world whose final days echo in our oldest stories. The same sea that cradled the legends of King Arthur holds a tragedy of its own. Off the jagged coast of Cornwall, old tales speak of Lyonesse, a fair and fertile land ruled by Tristan's father. This was no modest territory, but a whole country of fine cities and forests connecting Cornwall to the Isles of Scilly. The stories say it vanished in a single stormy night, the waves crashing over it so completely that by morning only the highest peaks remained as scattered islands. All its people, its knights, and its wonders were lost forever to the deep. It is a powerful myth, a Celtic Atlantis steeped in the romance of Arthurian lore. Yet the waves that erased Lyonesse may have been more than just metaphorical. Geology reveals that this corner of the world has been in a slow, steady state of collapse for thousands of years. The very landscape is sinking, a process known as subsidence, while global sea levels have been relentlessly rising since the end of the last ice age. The archipelago of the Isles of Scilly provides the key. Today, these islands are a breathtaking scatter of granite outcrops, but during periods of lower sea level, they were not isolated isles. They formed a single large island, and that large island was once connected to the Cornish mainland by a wide, low-lying plain. This was no land bridge, but a vast, habitable expanse. What we see today as treacherous reefs and isolated rocks were once the rolling hills and wooded valleys of that lost land. The memory of watching that world drown, of seeing familiar hunting grounds and freshwater springs slowly claimed by the salt tide over generations, would have been seared into the collective memory of the people. The final separation of the Isles of Scilly from each other and from the mainland was not one sudden event, but a series of catastrophic storms that breached the last remaining high grounds, each one a localized disaster that felt like the end of the world for those who lived through it. Folklore becomes a vessel for history when written records do not exist. The legend of Lyonesse is not a fairy tale invented from nothing. It is the poetic, amplified memory of a real geological process, a slow-motion disaster compressed into a single, terrible night by the power of storytelling. It asks us to listen carefully to our oldest myths, for they often carry the echo of actual landscapes, the ghost of a home that the sea never gave back. The fate of Heracleion serves as a chillingly precise example of a maritime city erased in a single night. This was not a myth, but a prominent and powerful Greek city-state, a member of the Achaean League, celebrated for its worship of Poseidon, the god of the sea and earthquakes. In the winter of 373 before the Common Era, the city was thriving. Then the ground began to shake violently. The main temblor was followed by a massive subterranean convulsion directly beneath the city. Ancient writers described a terrifying spectacle as immense columns of flame burst from the earth just before the cataclysm reached its peak. The earthquake itself was devastating, but the true death blow came from the water Heracleion had revered. The seismic shock triggered a colossal tsunami that surged from the Corinthian Gulf, washing over the city and dragging everything, its temples, its harbors, and its people, back into the sea. When dawn broke, Hylike was simply gone. The historian Pausanias, writing centuries later, reported that even the city's bronze statue of Poseidon remained visible for a time, tangled in the wreckage, a haunting monument to the god who had claimed his own. For generations, the site became a place of legend. Fishermen were said to snag their nets on the ruins below, and the story of the drowned city was told as a cautionary tale. Yet its exact location faded from memory, buried under centuries of silt and river deposits. The rediscovery of Hylike in the 1990s is a triumph of modern archaeology. Researchers, combining ancient texts with geological surveys, pinpointed a location not in the sea, but in a coastal plain inland. They realized the tsunami had not just destroyed the city, but had then dumped a thick layer of lagoon and river sediments over the ruins, sealing them beneath what became fertile farmland. Excavations finally uncovered the remains of classical Hylike, including collapsed walls and pottery, all lying in a layer of destruction sealed by marine sediments. Here was a city that had literally sunk into the earth and was then drowned by the sea, preserved almost like a time capsule. Hylike offers us a sobering reality check. It proves that the dramatic stories of cities swallowed by the waves are not always allegory. Sometimes they are simply history, a stark reminder of the immense and unpredictable power that the planet can unleash upon its most ambitious coastal dwellers. The sudden, violent end of Hylike reminds us that the sea can erase a civilization in a single night, but other cultures chose to meet the ocean on their own terms, using its vast emptiness as a highway to a new world. Scattered across the remote islands of the Pacific, from the shores of New Guinea all the way to the distant Samoa and Tonga, archaeologists have uncovered fragments of a single, unifying artifact. It is a style of pottery decorated with intricate geometric patterns, stamped into the clay with a toothed tool. These are the fingerprints of the Lapita people, and their trail of broken pottery forms a star map of the most audacious migration in human prehistory. Beginning around 1500 before the Common Era, these master mariners launched their double-hulled canoes into the open Pacific, sailing toward horizons where no land was visible. Their story is not one of a civilization lost to the sea, but of one that was born from it, their entire identity forged in the courage of exploration. The profound mystery surrounding them is not where they went, but who they were at the start. Their origins seem to lie in the islands of Southeast Asia, but the genetic and linguistic evidence suggests a complex fusion of peoples, a melting pot of cultures that coalesced into something entirely new just before their great exodus began. Their distinctive pottery serves as their only voice across the millennia. Each shard, with its precise, dentate-stamped designs of faces, eyes, and intricate labyrinths, is more than just a cooking pot. It is a cultural signature, a message in clay that says, "We were here." Finding this same stylistic tradition on islands separated by thousands of kilometers of open ocean is like finding the same house key on countless distant doorsteps. It proves these voyages were not accidental drifts but intentional, return journeys of colonization. They were not merely castaways, they were pioneers carrying a complete portable culture in their canoes, transporting domesticated animals like pigs, chickens, and dogs, along with vital crops like taro and yam, to seed new lives on untouched islands. Then, as swiftly as they appeared in the archaeological record, their pottery vanishes. This is not a disappearance but a metamorphosis. The Lapita culture did not collapse, it evolved. On the islands they settled over the centuries, their society gradually transformed, adapting to new environments and developing new traditions. The Lapita became the ancestors of the diverse Polynesian peoples we know today, from the Maori of New Zealand to the Hawaiians and the Tahitians. Their legacy is not a sunken city, but a living, breathing part of our modern world, a testament to the human spirit's relentless drive to explore. The true mystery of the Lapita is not a question of what was lost, but of the incredible journey that began everything. Sometimes the ocean itself chooses to reveal its secrets. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami was a tragedy of immense proportions, but in its powerful, receding waters, it exposed a legend long held by the fishermen of Mahabalipuram on India's southeastern coast. For generations, they had spoken of the 7 pagodas, a group of magnificent shore temples said to have been so beautiful that the gods grew envious. In a fit of divine jealousy, the legend claims 6 of these temples were swallowed by the sea, leaving only the single famous shore temple we see today. This story was often dismissed as pure folklore, a poetic explanation for the dramatic coastal ruins. Then the tsunami hit. As the colossal wave pulled back from the shore, it scoured the seabed with unimaginable force, temporarily stripping away centuries of sand and sediment. What it revealed was stunning. For a brief, clear moment, local fishermen and archaeologists saw the outlines of large, man-made structures on the ocean floor. They reported seeing the distinct shape of a massive stone lion, a complex of walls, and the scattered remains of other buildings, all lying in the shallow waters just offshore. This was not a vague shadow, but tangible proof that the legend held a kernel of truth. The gods may not have been jealous, but the sea had indeed taken something vast. Subsequent underwater archaeological surveys confirmed these initial sightings. They mapped a sprawling complex of submerged ruins, including fallen walls, stone blocks, and what appear to be the foundations of several temples. They also found remnants of an ancient, extensive port facility. This discovery fundamentally rewrites the history of Mahabalipuram. It was not just a site with one magnificent temple, but a much larger port city, a major maritime hub that likely traded across the Indian Ocean. A significant portion of this urban center now lies beneath the waves. The question is, what happened? Geological evidence suggests that the coastline here has been gradually submerging for thousands of years, a slow process of land sinking and sea levels rising. The city was likely built on a shore that was far more expansive, and over centuries, sections of it were slowly claimed by the ocean. The legend of the 6 temples lost in a single night could be a folk memory of a more sudden, catastrophic event, perhaps a powerful cyclone or a local tsunami that delivered the final, dramatic blow to structures already perilously close to the water's edge. The ruins of Mahabalipuram stand as a powerful dialogue between myth and science, where a story passed down for over 1,000 years was finally validated by one of the modern world's most devastating natural events. It reminds us that our oldest tales are often not mere fiction, but a different kind of history, written not on parchment, but in the collective memory of those who live by the sea. While the fishermen of Mahabalipuram saw their legends proven by a retreating wave, another civilization's history was carefully carved in stone, a riddle left by its most famous trading partner. Deep within the mortuary temple of Queen Hatshepsut at Deir el-Bahri, a sprawling series of reliefs documents a majestic maritime expedition to a place the Egyptians called the Land of Punt. These are not vague references, but vivid depictions of a thriving kingdom, a land of incredible wealth and strange wonders. The carvings show Egyptian ships loaded to the gunwales with treasures returning from this fabled place. Their cargo includes massive trunks of ebony wood, heaps of fragrant myrrh resin, sacks of precious electrum, and even living creatures like baboons and the graceful, long-necked giraffes. This was not a raid or a conquest, but a formal trade mission, a sign that Punt was a respected and powerful partner, a kingdom of equals to the great pharaoh herself. The Egyptians called it the Terraces of the Incense, a name that evokes a lush, mountainous landscape, but the precise location of this golden land remains one of Egyptology's most enduring puzzles. The debate over where Punt lay has stretched for over a century, with compelling arguments placing it on both sides of the Red Sea. One major theory points firmly to the Horn of Africa, modern-day Somalia and Ethiopia. This region is a natural source for the luxury goods the Egyptians so valued, particularly the aromatic frankincense and myrrh trees that grow in these arid highlands. The animals depicted, like the baboons, are also native to Africa, yet the Egyptian reliefs offer tantalizing clues that complicate a simple answer. They illustrate the village of the Puntites, showing distinctive conical huts raised high on stilts above the ground, a style of architecture used in swampy or flood-prone areas. They also meticulously depict the Puntite queen, a figure named Atii, with a physical stature and features that some scholars argue point more toward populations in the southern Arabian Peninsula. Could Punt have been a civilization straddling both coasts, a maritime network that connected Africa and Arabia? Or was it a confederation of ports and inland suppliers, a name the Egyptians gave to a whole commercial region rather than a single, pinpointed capital? The search for Punt is a search for a ghost in the geography of the ancient world. Its true location died with the last Egyptian scribe who knew the route, leaving us with only the inventory of its riches and the beautiful, ambiguous stone carvings of a land that was the source of dreams but has since vanished from every map. The search for Punt's golden shores stands in stark contrast to a city whose ruins are not lost, but simply relocated to a world of water and light. In the serene waters of Crete's Bay of Elaunda, the past is not buried but submerged. Here lies the ancient Dorian city of Aulis, a once prosperous maritime power that now exists as a ghost beneath the waves. For 1,000 years, Aulis was a formidable independent city-state, minting its own coins and commanding a powerful fleet. Its strategic location made it a key player in the trade networks of the Eastern Mediterranean, a bustling hub of commerce and culture. Today, you can still walk out onto a narrow causeway and peer into the impossibly clear turquoise water. Below the surface, the grid of a city is laid out like a blueprint on the seafloor. You can follow the lines of ancient streets and make out the foundations of houses and public buildings, all settled peacefully among the seaweed and darting fish. Most striking is the Sunken Mole, the long stone breakwater that once protected its bustling harbor, now a submerged pathway for sea urchins and octopuses. This is not a city shattered by a volcanic explosion like Thera, but one that seems to have gently, reluctantly surrendered to the sea. The cause of its submergence was likely a 1-2 punch of geological forces. This entire region is seismically active, and a series of powerful earthquakes could have caused the land to suddenly drop, a process known as subsidence, allowing the sea to rush in and claim entire neighborhoods in a single generation. Compounding this sudden trauma was the slow, inexorable rise of sea levels that followed the last ice age, a relentless process that would have gradually flooded low-lying coastal areas over centuries. Aulis presents a compelling scenario where both sudden disaster and gradual change worked in concert. Perhaps a major quake delivered the critical blow, fatally compromising the city's defenses and infrastructure, after which the rising Mediterranean slowly finished the job, turning a powerful city into a shallow underwater archaeological park. The silent, sunken walls of Aulis ask us a poignant question. How many other coastal cities, now thriving and vibrant, will one day share this same fate, their streets destined to be wandered not by people but by the timeless currents of the sea? The silent ruins of Aulis rest in a familiar sea, but entire continents can also slip beneath the waves. Geologists now recognize a lost world called Zealandia, a continent that is 94% submerged in the Southwest Pacific. Its highest mountain peaks are the islands we know as New Zealand and New Caledonia, while the rest, a landmass larger than India, lies hidden beneath thousands of feet of ocean. This is not a myth like Mu or Lemuria, but a confirmed geological fact, a continent that truly did sink. The story of Zealandia is one of dramatic geological divorce. For millions of years, it was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, snugly connected to Australia and Antarctica. Then, around 80 million years ago, the Earth's crust began to stretch and thin in this region. Zealandia started to pull away, not with a violent rupture, but with a slow, steady separation that caused it to sink, its vast plains and plateaus gradually flooding over tens of millions of years. This was not a sudden cataclysm, but an epic geological sigh. When most of this continent was above water, it would have presented a breathtaking landscape. Imagine a world of rolling hills, vast forests, and strange, isolated creatures, a continent-sized laboratory for evolution. This leads to a profound archaeological mystery. Could Zealandia have been a stepping stone for the very first human expansions into the Pacific? We know the Lapita people sailed through this region thousands of years ago, but what if they were not the first? The submerged coastlines of Zealandia, which were dry land during the last ice age when sea levels were lower, could hold the evidence. Did earlier, unknown seafarers explore these now drowned shores, leaving behind campsites and tools on land that is now part of the continental shelf? The search is like looking for a needle in a sunken haystack, but the potential reward is staggering. Finding evidence of human habitation on the submerged parts of Zealandia would rewrite the entire timeline of the peopling of the Pacific, pushing back the dawn of open ocean exploration by thousands of years. This lost continent is more than a geological curiosity. It is a submerged puzzle box that could contain the secrets of humanity's most ancient journeys across the greatest ocean on Earth. The silent grid of Aulis is a modern spectacle, but the seabed near a small Greek village holds a city far more ancient. Just 3 to 4 meters beneath the waves off the coast of southern Laconia lies Pavloptri, the oldest known submerged city in the entire world. This is not a collection of scattered ruins, but a complete urban blueprint frozen in time. Its foundations date back over 5,000 years to a time when the Great Pyramids of Giza were still new. Walking the seabed here with an archaeologist's eye is like reading a map of a Bronze Age mind. The city's entire street plan remains perfectly visible, a network of narrow alleys and wider thoroughfares laid out with clear intention. You can distinguish the outlines of individual buildings, from small domestic houses to larger, possibly public or administrative structures. Most haunting are the courtyard tombs, simple stone chambers that once held the remains of the city's first inhabitants, now open to the ocean currents. This was not a ceremonial site, but a thriving, working port. Its layout reveals a sophisticated understanding of maritime trade, with buildings arranged around a protected harbor basin. Archaeologists have found countless artifacts on the seafloor, from everyday pottery and obsidian tools to more personal items like ceramic loom weights, telling a story of a community that wove its own cloth and engaged in commerce across the Aegean. The very disaster that doomed Pavloptri is also what saved it for us. The city likely sank due to a series of powerful earthquakes, a common fate in this seismically active region. The ground simply dropped and the sea poured in, covering the streets and buildings in a protective blanket of sediment and salt water. This sudden submergence shielded Pavloptri from the usual cycles of destruction and rebuilding that erase so many ancient cities. It was never built over by the Romans, its stones were not quarried for a medieval fortress, and its land was not turned into farmland. It is a pristine time capsule, a moment of Bronze Age life captured at its peak and then preserved in a watery vault. Pavloptri offers us something incredibly rare, an undisturbed view of the dawn of European urbanism, a complete port city sleeping on the seabed, waiting to have its stories translated from the silent language of stone. The phantom island of High Brassel is a ghost story written on old vellum. Medieval maps drawn with painstaking care show it as a perfect circle split by a river lying somewhere in the misty Atlantic west of Ireland. It was not just another island, but an enchanted one, said to be cloaked in an impenetrable fog that lifted for just a single day every 7 years. On that day, fortunate sailors might glimpse its green shores, but it always vanished if anyone tried to land, a tantalizing prize forever retreating over the horizon. This Celtic vision of an earthly paradise captivated explorers for centuries, driving experienced sea captains to search for a land that cartographers insisted was real. The name itself, High Brasil, has no connection to the South American country, Brazil. It likely derives from the old Gaelic term Bresil, meaning high king or of great beauty, fitting for a legendary isle. Its persistence on maps for hundreds of years, from the 1400s well into the 1800s, is a testament to the power of belief over evidence. How could such a detailed and consistent myth hold such sway over rational minds? The origins of High Brasil are a fascinating blend of maritime misperception and deep-seated human longing. One practical explanation points to the Porcupine Bank, a vast, shallow sandbank about 200 kilometers off the Irish coast. During periods of exceptionally low tides, this bank could have been exposed, creating a temporary island of sand and shingle that would vanish again as the waters returned. A sailor spotting this fleeting landmass could easily have believed they saw the legendary isle. Another possibility lies in a complex optical illusion known as a superior mirage. Under specific atmospheric conditions, layers of cold and warm air can act like a lens, bending light to project a distant, unseen object, like a part of the Faroe Islands or even a cloud bank, into the sky, making it appear as a solid, hovering landmass where none exists. These Fata Morgana mirages are incredibly convincing, creating shimmering castles and cliffs that defy all logic. Yet the most powerful fuel for the High Brasil legend was not physical at all, but psychological. It represents the universal human desire for an otherworld, a perfect sanctuary just beyond our reach, a place untouched by the struggles of ordinary life. For generations of Irish fishermen and ambitious explorers, High Brasil was a promise, a symbol that there was always something more beyond the known world, a hope that kept them sailing toward the setting sun long after the maps had been proven wrong. The legend of High Brasil was a phantom born from mist and hope, but the sunken port of Caesarea Maritima is a marvel of stone and ambition laid bare on the seabed. This was no mythical island, but a colossal, state-of-the-art harbor complex commissioned by King Herod the Great in the 1st century before the Common Era. Herod, a client king of the Roman Empire, wanted a port to rival any in the ancient world, and he built it on a stretch of coast with no natural shelter. His engineers performed what can only be described as a miracle of maritime architecture. They constructed 2 massive breakwaters, one stretching over 2,000 feet, that reached out into the open Mediterranean to create a safe anchorage for hundreds of ships. The secret to their construction was a revolutionary material, hydraulic concrete. This was not ordinary mortar, but a special Roman recipe that could actually set and harden underwater. Workers would mix the concrete on barges and then pour it into enormous wooden forms that were sunk into place on the seafloor. The result was a harbor so vast and secure it was named Sebastos, the Greek word for Augustus, in honor of the Roman emperor. For over a century, Caesarea was the bustling gateway to the Roman province of Judea, a cosmopolitan center where goods and cultures from across the empire flowed ashore. Yet this engineering triumph was built on a geological fault line, both literally and figuratively. The very sea it was meant to conquer would ultimately reclaim it. The artificial harbor began to suffer from a fatal flaw, silting. The strong coastal currents constantly deposited sand and sediment into the harbor basin, slowly choking its channels and reducing its depth. Maintaining it was a constant losing battle. Then the earthquakes began. This region is seismically active, and a series of powerful tremors, likely starting in the 2nd or 3rd century, shattered the magnificent breakwaters. Stone blocks weighing many tons were dislodged and sent tumbling into the deep. Compounding the damage, geological evidence suggests that at least one, and possibly more, tsunamis struck the coast, their colossal waves delivering the final blow to the already weakened structures. The harbor that had been Herod's pride was rendered useless, its protective arms broken. For centuries, the full story of its grandeur lay hidden beneath the waves until modern underwater archaeologists began to piece it together. Divers have mapped the colossal ruins of the sunken breakwaters, now home to schools of fish. They have recovered massive statues that once adorned the waterfront, including a stunning headless statue of a Roman emperor, perhaps Hadrian or Trajan, that had fallen from its pedestal during a quake. They have even found the remains of warehouses, their contents long since washed away, but their foundations telling a story of immense wealth and trade. The sunken port of Caesarea is not a myth, but a physical lesson in the limits of human ambition against the patient, inexorable power of the sea. Even the most pious could not have imagined a punishment so complete. The legend of Rungholt tells of a city drowned not just for its wealth, but for its hubris, a place so wicked its very name became a byword for divine retribution. Located in the North Frisian region of what is now Germany, Rungholt was said to be a bustling port of immense prosperity, its merchants grown arrogant and decadent. According to folklore, the city's downfall began with a sacrilegious mockery when drunken citizens forced a priest to give last rites to a pig. In response, so the story goes, God sent a colossal storm tide on the night of January 16, 1362, to wipe the city and all its sinful inhabitants from the face of the earth. By morning, the entire settlement had vanished beneath the waves, leaving only the church bells to be heard tolling mournfully from the deep on stormy nights. This tale of the northern Atlantis is a powerful moral fable, but it is rooted in a terrifying geological reality. The Great Drowning of Men, as the event was historically known, was a very real and catastrophic storm surge that shattered the vulnerable coastline. A potent combination of a severe cyclone and a high spring tide sent colossal walls of water crashing over the low-lying marshlands and artificial dwelling mounds that people called home. The result was a humanitarian disaster of staggering scale, with historical records estimating the loss of life at well over 10,000 people across the region, with countless villages and farmlands swallowed by the sea. Rungholt was likely one of the largest and most prominent of these lost settlements, its dramatic fate amplified over centuries into a cautionary legend. The search for its physical remains has turned the vast tidal flats of the Wadden Sea into an open-air crime scene for archaeologists. The challenge is that this is not a sunken city resting in deep, still water. The Wadden Sea is a dynamic, shifting landscape of mud, sand, and channels that are exposed at low tide and submerged again just hours later. This constant movement both hides and reveals clues. Researchers have identified a series of scattered, man-made mounds known as terps, which were the foundations for houses and barns, now lying in a long line across the tidal flats. They have unearthed the remnants of a sophisticated system of drainage ditches and a main canal, evidence of the community's engineering skill in managing its watery environment. Most tellingly, they have found the clear imprint of a tidal creek that was suddenly and violently widened, its sides scarred by the force of the 1362 flood. The ongoing quest for Rungholt is a race against time and tide, a painstaking effort to map a ghost city that appears only when the water recedes. It stands as a stark reminder that the line between myth and history is often drawn by the relentless sea itself. While the North Sea reclaimed Rungholt with a storm's fury, the Mediterranean swallowed a city of sin not with rage but with a slow, sinking breath. Off the coast of Italy, in the blue haze of the Bay of Naples, lie the sunken streets of Baiae. This was the Las Vegas of ancient Rome, a resort town infamous for its mineral hot springs and a level of decadence that scandalized even the empire's most jaded senators. Here, the political and social elite built sprawling, luxurious villas directly over the water, their marble colonnades and private piers extending into the bay. It was a place of whispered political deals, extravagant parties, and hedonistic pleasures, a playground where emperors like Nero and Caligula were known to indulge their wildest whims. The very name Baiae became synonymous with vice and corruption, a symbol of a civilization teetering on the edge of its own excess. Yet its end did not come from moral decay, but from a deep geological slumber. The entire region sits atop the volatile Phlegrean Fields, a vast supervolcano whose restless energy causes a phenomenon known as bradycism. This is the slow, relentless rising and falling of the Earth's crust, driven by the movement of magma chambers far below. Over centuries, the ground beneath Baiae began to sink, inch by imperceptible inch. The Mediterranean did not attack the city, it simply crept in, patiently flooding the lavish villas and paved plazas, reclaiming the empire's most notorious pleasure garden. Today, this sunken world is an underwater archaeological park, a ghostly gallery of lost luxury. Divers can swim through the ruins of a grand villa and find themselves hovering over a perfectly preserved mosaic floor, its colorful tiles depicting mythological scenes now watched only by schools of fish. They can glide past the crumbled walls of a complex once known as the Temple of Mercury, a vast domed structure that was actually a Roman bathhouse, its dome now open to the sky. Most haunting of all are the statues, their marble forms now home to corals and anemones, standing as silent, stoic sentinels in the gentle current. The submerged city of Baiae is a different kind of maritime mystery. It is not a tale of sudden catastrophe, but of a gradual, almost peaceful surrender. The water did not erase the evidence of its grandeur. It simply moved the museum to a new, silent hall, preserving the opulent excess of a civilization that partied until the very ground beneath it gave way. The wealth of Solomon was a legend in its own time, a river of gold and silver flowing into Jerusalem from the ends of the earth, and at the very source of that river was a place named Tarshish. The Old Testament speaks of this distant land with a kind of reverence, describing the Tarshish fleet, the ships that sailed once every 3 years, returning with cargoes so precious they included silver, iron, tin, lead, ivory, apes, and peacocks. This was not a minor trading post, but a source of foundational metals, the very materials that built and armed a kingdom. Yet for all its fame in Scripture, Tarshish itself has become a ghost, its location one of the Bible's most stubborn and alluring cold cases. The core of the mystery is that the biblical authors never felt the need to explain where it was. For them, it was simply the ultimate faraway port, a proverbial destination for a long and perilous sea voyage, the ancient equivalent of saying a ship sailed to the other side of the world. So where was this land of almost mythical wealth? The evidence points in several compelling directions, each with its own persuasive case. One of the strongest candidates lies in the same sunken marshes we explored earlier, the lost kingdom of Tartessos in Spain. The names Tarshish and Tartessos are linguistically similar, and the region was famed in antiquity for its rich mines of silver, tin, and other metals, exactly matching the biblical description of Solomon's imports. It was a known trading partner for the Phoenicians, the very seafarers who the Bible says operated Solomon's fleet. The pieces fit together with an almost perfect symmetry. Yet other theories challenge this tidy answer. Could Tarshish have been the island of Sardinia in the Mediterranean? Sardinia possesses immense deposits of copper and lead, and archaeological finds have revealed ancient trade connections with the Levant. Some scholars even propose a location much farther east, pointing to India, citing the mention of peacocks and ivory, goods readily associated with the Indian subcontinent. This would make the voyage of the Tarshish ships an epic journey across the entire Indian Ocean. Perhaps the most fascinating possibility is that Tarshish was not a single place at all, but a term that evolved over time. It might have originally referred to a specific metal refinery or port like Tartessos, and later become a general term for any distant source of mineral wealth, applied to Sardinia or other regions as trade routes shifted and expanded. The very word may have meant smelting plant or refinery in ancient languages, describing a function rather than a fixed point on a map. this would explain why the search for a single, pinpointed Tarshish has been so fruitless. We are not looking for one lost city, but for a concept, a name given to the mysterious, mineral-rich ends of the earth. The enduring power of Tarshish lies in this very ambiguity. It represents the ultimate prize, the unreachable source of fortune that drove ancient explorers to sail beyond the horizon, into the realm of legend and onto the pages of scripture itself. 16 feet beneath the Mediterranean waves lies a village frozen in the moment of its abandonment. Off the coast of Israel, the submerged settlement of Atlantis is not a city of grand monuments, but a hauntingly intimate snapshot from the very dawn of farming. This Neolithic village dates back more than 9,000 years, a time when humanity was just beginning to trade the wandering life of the hunter-gatherer for the settled life of the farmer. Its preservation is nothing short of miraculous. Unlike other ancient sites buried under layers of later civilization, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea before silt could fully cover it, leaving its foundations exposed on the seabed as if time itself had simply paused. Here, archaeologists have found the complete blueprint of a prehistoric community. There are stone houses, their floor plans still clearly defined. There are paved pathways connecting the homes and the remains of circular stone fences that once corralled livestock. The villagers dug deep, stone-lined wells to access fresh water, a testament to their engineering ingenuity in the face of a changing environment. Most haunting of all is a semicircle of massive stones, a ritual monument arranged with clear intention, its center holding a freshwater spring. This was not merely a functional place, it was a spiritual one, a community that blended the practical needs of survival with a deep connection to the unseen world. Yet this perfectly preserved time capsule also holds a darker secret. Analysis of the human remains recovered from the site has revealed the earliest known cases of tuberculosis in history. The skeletons show the telltale lesions on their bones, evidence of a painful, debilitating disease that spread through this early farming community. Living in close quarters with their animals, these pioneers of agriculture may have encountered a pathogen that jumped from their livestock, a tragic side effect of their revolutionary new way of life. This discovery forces us to reconsider the narrative of human progress. The shift from hunting to farming is often portrayed as an unqualified step forward, but Atlantis presents a more complex and somber picture. Here was a society that had mastered crop cultivation, animal domestication, and sophisticated construction, yet it was vulnerable to a microscopic threat it could not possibly understand. So why did they leave? The most likely culprit is the same force that has claimed so many coastal worlds, the relentless rise of sea levels as the last ice age receded. The slow creep of saltwater would have contaminated their precious freshwater wells and flooded their fields, making life increasingly unsustainable. They may have watched for generations as the shoreline advanced, until the day came when they had no choice but to gather their belongings and move inland, leaving their homes to the sea. Atlantis offers us a unique window into a pivotal and vulnerable chapter in our shared human story, a poignant reminder that even our greatest revolutions have always been accompanied by profound and sometimes heartbreaking costs. A phantom island can reshape the borders of nations and the fortunes of empires. For over 300 years, maps of the Gulf of Mexico consistently showed an island named Bermeja sitting off the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. It was a fixed point, a geographic certainty used by Spanish navigators and later by Mexican cartographers. Then, in the 20th century, when modern satellites and naval surveys began to map the ocean with scientific precision, Bermeja was gone. There was no island, no submerged peak, not even a shallow reef where the maps insisted it should be. It had simply vanished from the face of the earth. This was more than a cartographic curiosity. It was a geopolitical earthquake. The location of Bermeja was critically important because of a principle in international law known as the exclusive economic zone. This rule states that a nation controls all the resources in the ocean for 200 nautical miles from its shores. An island, even a small, uninhabited one, extends that invisible border dramatically. If Bermuda had existed, it would have granted Mexico access to a vast, oil-rich sector of the Gulf known as the Hoya de Dona, an area also claimed by the United States. The Phantom Island suddenly held the key to billions of dollars in untapped petroleum reserves. Its disappearance from official charts directly reduced Mexico's potential maritime territory, a loss of incredible economic and strategic value. So what happened to Bermuda? The search for an answer has spawned a spectrum of theories, from the mundane to the extraordinary. The most accepted explanation is a simple cartographic error that persisted for centuries. Early explorers navigating by the stars and crude instruments might have misidentified a low-lying sandbank, a temporary island formed by a shift in currents, or even a mirage. Once this non-existent land was drawn onto a respected map, later cartographers would have copied it faithfully, cementing the myth for generations. The island was a mistake that gained authority through repetition. Another possibility is that Bermuda was a real sand or coral island that was subsequently eroded away by hurricanes or rising sea levels, a victim of the very environment it inhabited. Then there are the more conspiratorial whispers. Could the island have been deliberately erased? Some have suggested that powerful interests, perhaps even a government, destroyed the island to redraw the maritime boundaries in their favor. The idea of using explosives to eliminate a small, sandy cay is not entirely far-fetched, though no evidence has ever been found to support such a dramatic act. The Mexican government itself launched official expeditions to find its lost territory, scanning the seabed with advanced sonar, but they found nothing. The mystery of Bermuda forces us to confront the fragile nature of our maps. It reveals how much of history was built on best guesses and unverified claims, and how a single, persistent error on a piece of parchment can echo for centuries, ultimately deciding who owns the wealth hidden beneath the waves. A city that commanded the customs of an empire now answers only to the tides. For over 1,000 years, the Egyptian port of Heracleion was little more than a legend, a place mentioned by Herodotus and celebrated in poetry, but lost to the physical world. The Greeks knew it as Heracleion, the Egyptians called it Thonis, and it was the undisputed, mandatory gateway to Egypt. Before Alexander the Great founded Alexandria, every single Greek ship laden with trade goods had to sail here first. Its officials inspected cargo, collected taxes, and its temples welcomed travelers seeking favor from the gods before they ventured further down the Nile. This was not just a port, it was the official front door to a kingdom, a city of immense wealth and bureaucratic power. Then, around the 2nd century before the Common Era, it simply vanished, its location becoming one of history's greatest maritime riddles. The discovery in the late 1990s by French archaeologist Frank Gaudiot was as dramatic as the city's disappearance. After years of searching the vast Abukir Bay, his team's sonar finally detected anomalies on the seafloor. Diving into the murky waters, they were met with a sight that defied belief. The bay was not a barren seabed, but a sprawling underwater museum. They found the colossal statue of a Ptolemaic queen carved from red granite, her regal features still sharp despite centuries submerged. Nearby lay a massive statue of the god Hapi, the deity of the Nile's flood, a symbol of fertility now resting in the sterile saltwater. Most striking of all was the discovery of the Naus of the Decades, a sacred shrine covered in intricate hieroglyphs that held advanced astronomical knowledge. The artifacts were not scattered randomly, but lay as if the city had been gently lowered into the sea. Dozens of ancient shipwrecks were found at anchor, still holding their cargoes of gold coins and bronze vessels, their hulls swallowed by the sediment that both buried and preserved them. Giant stone stelae, inscribed with decrees in both Greek and Egyptian, stood where they had been erected, their messages from the pharaohs now read only by fish and archaeologists. So what could have toppled such a powerful city? The evidence points to a slow-motion disaster. Heracleion was built on the unstable clay of the Nile Delta. When subjected to the immense weight of its own massive stone temples and monuments, combined with the constant shaking from earthquakes, the very ground beneath it underwent a process called liquefaction. The solid earth effectively turned into a liquid quicksand, causing the buildings to tilt, fracture, and sink. This geological vulnerability was then exploited by the relentless rise of sea levels. The Mediterranean slowly crept in, flooding a city that was already sinking into its own foundation. Heracleion did not vanish in a single cataclysm, but in a tragic, gradual collapse, its grand avenues and bustling harbors surrendering inch by inch to the water that had once been the source of its greatness. Its silent, submerged grandeur forces us to wonder how many other legendary gateways to lost empires are still waiting, hidden just beneath the silt, for their stories to be told once more. Some of the greatest journeys in human history began on a landscape that no longer exists. Stretching between Siberia and Alaska lay a lost continent in its own right, a vast subcontinent known as Beringia. During the last ice age, so much of the world's water was locked in glaciers that global sea levels plummeted, exposing the shallow floor of the Bering Strait. This was not merely a narrow land bridge, but a sprawling, treeless plain wider than the state of Texas, connecting two worlds. For thousands of years, Beringia was a viable homeland, a mesic refugium, a scientific term for a sheltered region that escaped the worst of the glacial cold. While immense ice sheets buried much of North America and Europe, Beringia remained a relatively dry and stable grassland, a veritable paradise for the animals of the mammoth steppe. Herds of woolly mammoth, steppe bison, and giant elk roamed these fertile valleys, followed by the first human pioneers who had ventured out of Asia. This was not a simple corridor that people sprinted across. Archaeological and genetic evidence now suggests that these ancient populations lived and thrived in Beringia for millennia, perhaps as long as 5,000 years, isolated from their Asian ancestors and the untouched Americas ahead. They developed a distinct culture in this cold paradise, their lives woven into the rhythm of the great herds. Then the world warmed again. The great glaciers began to melt, and the oceans started their relentless rise. The land bridge did not simply sink in a day, it was slowly drowned, its coasts crumbling as the sea claimed the lowlands century by century. The final severance around 11,000 years ago was a quiet geological event of profound human consequence. The peoples of Beringia, cut off from their past, now faced a new world to the east, becoming the ancestors of all indigenous peoples of the Americas. Their original homeland, the very stage for this epic pause in human migration, now lies at the bottom of the Bering Sea, a lost world that holds the untold stories of a people who waited for an entire continent to open. The sea has preserved a city in the very act of its vanishing. In southern Turkey, along the ancient Lycian coast, the ruins of Apelli tell a story not of a single disaster, but of a slow, patient descent. This is a city caught between two worlds, its sturdy Roman walls still standing on dry land while its harbor structures and lower streets lie just beneath the crystal-clear surface of the Mediterranean. You can literally walk through its history on land and then wade into the water to see where that history ends. This remarkable preservation is due to the same geological forces that doomed it. The entire coastline here is slowly sinking, a gradual tectonic subsidence that allowed the sea to claim the city inch by inch over centuries, rather than in a single, violent cataclysm. What was the source of Apelli's surprising wealth in this remote location? The answer is written in the stones lining its shoreline and scattered across its seafloor. The city's economy was built on a color, a deep, rich purple known as Tyrian purple. This was not a dye made from plants, but from a living creature, the spiny Dimurex sea snail. Thousands of broken pottery vats and immense mounds of crushed snail shells have been found here, the industrial waste of a booming ancient industry. Producing this dye was a famously foul-smelling and labor-intensive process. It took thousands of snails to yield a single gram of the precious pigment, making it worth more than its weight in gold. This luxurious color became a powerful status symbol across the Roman Empire, reserved for the stripes on the togas of senators and the robes of emperors. Apulei, though a small city, was a crucial production hub in this lucrative trade network. Its slow sinking into the sea has created a perfect archaeological timeline. The structures on land show us its vibrant beginnings and its peak as a specialized industrial center. The submerged ruins, however, tell the story of its long-managed retreat. As the waters rose, the inhabitants adapted. They built new walls to hold back the sea and continued to live and work here for generations, even as their city slowly drowned around them. The final abandonment was likely a quiet affair, a community gradually moving to higher ground as maintaining the harbor and lower city became a battle they could no longer win. Apulei offers a rare and poignant glimpse into a maritime civilization that did not fall suddenly, but simply receded, leaving its story half on the land and half in the sea, a permanent monument to the relentless, patient power of the water. The mists of Arthurian legend hold one of the most enduring visions of a lost world, the mystical island of Avalon. This was no ordinary land, but the place where the great king's sword Excalibur was forged by otherworldly hands, and the sanctuary to which the mortally wounded Arthur was carried after the tragedy of his final battle. It was described as an island of apple trees, a place of eternal healing and peace, forever separated from the world of men by water and a perpetual magical haze. This fantastical image feels entirely removed from history, yet its roots may be tangled in the very real and waterlogged landscape of Glastonbury in Somerset. Today, Glastonbury Tor rises from flat plains, but in the early medieval period, this was a dramatically different place. The surrounding area, known as the Summerland Marshes, was a vast, shallow inland sea that flooded with the winter rains. The Tor would not have been a hill on dry land, but a true island, its dramatic silhouette reflected in the still waters, often shrouded in the thick mists that rose from the wetlands. To anyone approaching by boat, it would have appeared exactly as the legends describe, an island emerging from the water and mist, a place set apart from the ordinary world. This powerful geography aligns perfectly with a deep Celtic spiritual belief, the concept of the otherworldly island paradise. In Celtic mythology, the boundaries between our world and the next were often thin places, located on islands across water or veiled in fog. These were not destinations one could simply sail to on a map, but realms accessible only through magic, fate, or divine intervention. Avalon is the ultimate expression of this idea, a land lost between the tangible and the ethereal. It represents a profound human longing for a place beyond suffering, a sanctuary where heroes do not die but wait, sleeping, for the hour of their people's greatest need. The legend of Avalon, therefore, is far more than a simple fairy tale. It is a cultural memory written upon a landscape, a story that transforms a real, physical place into a symbol of eternal hope, forever floating just beyond the edge of sight in the liminal space where water meets the sky. The seabed near India holds a debate as fierce as the ocean's currents. In the Gulf of Combat, marine scientists conducting a pollution survey made a startling discovery. Their sonar images revealed what appeared to be the outlines of a vast, submerged city lying deep beneath the murky waters. The scans showed perfectly geometric formations, including what looked like the foundations of large buildings, a complex network of channels, and structures that some researchers immediately identified as a grand staircase. The scale was immense, suggesting an urban settlement stretching for miles along the ancient bed of a forgotten river. Follow-up expeditions dredged the site, bringing up artifacts that sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. They recovered wooden objects, pottery shards, and stones that appeared to be tools. Most controversially, some of these items were reportedly carbon dated to an astonishing age, potentially pushing their origins back to a time when mainstream history suggests only simple nomadic cultures existed in the region. This evidence, proponents argue, points to a sophisticated, organized society that flourished here thousands of years before the Indus Valley civilization, a lost metropolis that met a catastrophic end when rising sea levels or a seismic event submerged it entirely. Yet for every voice of excitement, there is a chorus of profound skepticism. The scientific community remains deeply divided over the gulf of combat findings. Critics point out that the sonar images, while compelling, are open to interpretation. The geometric patterns could be the result of natural geological processes. The powerful currents in the Gulf are known to scour the seabed, creating sharp edges and rectangular formations in the sedimentary rock that can easily mimic human construction. The artifacts themselves are at the heart of the controversy. Skeptics question the context of their recovery, noting that objects dredged from a turbulent seafloor could have been carried from many different time periods and locations, their dates meaningless without a clear, undisturbed archaeological layer. The reported dating, if accurate, would upend our entire understanding of the timeline of civilization in the Indian subcontinent, a claim that requires extraordinary evidence. This leaves us with a tantalizing enigma. Are we looking at the sunken ruins of a forgotten world, a city so ancient it rewrites human history? Or is this a case of pareidolia, our human instinct to see familiar patterns in random shapes, amplified by the murky depths of a difficult-to-explore ocean? The sunken structures of the Gulf of Combat remain a profound question mark, a ghost city on a sonar screen that challenges us to prove whether it is a legend made stone or simply a masterpiece of nature's patient hand. The ancient Greeks told a story of a city so devoted to pleasure it became a cautionary tale. Sybaris, a colony on the sole of Italy's boot, was legendary for its wealth. Its citizens were said to sleep on beds of rose petals, train their horses to dance to flute music, and ban all noisy trades like blacksmithing from their city limits to ensure undisturbed tranquility. This was not just a city of luxury, but a maritime powerhouse. Its wealth flowed directly from the sea, its fertile lands and strategic port allowing it to control lucrative trade routes across the Mediterranean. Sybaris grew fat and powerful, but it also grew arrogant, provoking the envy and hatred of its neighbor, the more austere city of Croton. The conflict culminated in a decisive war in the year 510 before the Common Era. The army of Croton, led by the famed athlete Milo, marched on Sybaris and achieved a crushing victory, but the conquerors were not content with mere plunder or occupation. They wanted to erase Sybaris from the earth completely. According to later historians, they did something brutally ingenious. They diverted the nearby Krathais River from its course, forcing its waters to flow directly over the ruins of the vanquished city. The river did its work, depositing a thick, suffocating blanket of silt and mud over the grand avenues and opulent villas, burying every trace of Sybaris under a new, flat plain. For centuries, the city was considered a mere myth, a moral fable about the dangers of decadence. Then, in the 1960s, Italian archaeologists began to drill into that very plain. Their cores brought up not just soil, but fragments of ancient pottery and building materials from deep underground. A full-scale excavation followed, revealing a city frozen in a single layer of destruction, sealed beneath the river's sediment just as the ancient stories had claimed. The lost city of Sybaris was real. Its physical remains may be less dramatic than sunken marble, but its buried location is what preserved its story so perfectly. The rediscovery of Sybaris does more than confirm a legend. It illuminates the incredible reach of ancient maritime trade. The opulence that defined the city was built on goods moving across the water, its fortunes rising and falling with the tides of commerce and the brutal politics of the Greek colonial world. The river silt that buried it became its protector, a muddy time capsule preserving a stark lesson about how quickly the sea's greatest gifts can be taken away. The same waters that guard the gateways of Heracleion also hold the secrets of its sister city, Canopus. While Heracleion was the official customs house for Egypt, Canopus was its spiritual and sensual heart, a city dedicated to the god Serapis and famed for rituals that blurred the line between devotion and desire. Located on the westernmost mouth of the Nile, a branch that has long since vanished from the map, Canopus drew pilgrims and pleasure seekers from across the ancient world. Its great temple of Serapis was a place of healing and oracle, where the sick came to sleep in sacred halls hoping for a curative dream from the god. Yet the city's reputation was equally built on its vibrant, all-night festivals, where the clatter of castanets and the scent of wine filled the air along the canal-lined streets. This was a place where the sacred and the profane flowed together as smoothly as the Nile's own currents. But the river that gave Canopus its life would also be the instrument of its slow death. The very trade that enriched it carried a silent, relentless enemy, silt. Year after year, the Nile deposited its rich, fertile mud into the canopic branch, gradually choking the waterways that led to the city's bustling harbors. Imagine the frustration of a ship's captain watching the water grow shallower with each passing season, until the day his vessel could no longer reach the docks that had welcomed his father and his grandfather. The city's economic lifeblood was slowly cut off. Compounding this, the land itself began to sink, a victim of the same unstable delta clay that doomed Heracleion. Major earthquakes likely delivered critical blows, shattering its temples and causing sections of the city to slide beneath the waves. The sea, patient and inexorable, did the rest, flooding the grand processional way and the sacred precincts where so many had sought salvation and ecstasy. Today, the ruins of Canopus lie scattered on the seabed of Abaukia Bay, its stones resting peacefully near those of its more famous neighbor. Archaeologists have mapped its drowned temples and recovered statues of gods and pharaohs that once watched over the revelry. Canopus represents a different kind of maritime mystery, a city that faded not with a bang, but with a whisper, its vibrant voice slowly muffled by the very silt of the river that had once made it great. Their story begins in a world of volcanoes and sheer cliffs, a chain of islands that stood as lonely sentinels in the eastern Atlantic. The Guanches were the aboriginal inhabitants of the Canary Islands, a people who lived in complete isolation from the rest of humanity for thousands of years, their culture preserved in a bubble of time until European ships arrived in the 14th century. When the first Spanish explorers made landfall, they encountered a society that seemed to belong to a different age. The Guanches lived in caves and simple stone houses, wore garments of woven goat skin, and possessed a technology that was Neolithic in character. They had no knowledge of metalworking, and most startlingly, they had no boats. They were a people surrounded by a vast, impassable ocean, with no memory of how they had come to be there. This is the central, haunting mystery of the Guanche civilization. How did a population of thousands end up on these remote islands without any apparent means of sailing? The most widely accepted theory points to a North African origin. Linguistic and genetic studies strongly suggest the Guanches were descended from Berber peoples from the Atlas Mountains region. But this only deepens the puzzle. If they were Berbers, how did they cross more than 100 kilometers of open ocean? The journey would have required capable seafaring vessels, yet the Guanches the Europeans met had lost all such knowledge. Their isolation must have been so profound and so ancient that the very skill that brought them to the islands was forgotten over the centuries, leaving them stranded in their own paradise. This lost maritime ability makes another discovery on the islands all the more perplexing. On the island of Tenerife, you can find the pyramids of Guamer, a complex of 6 rectangular stone structures built with lava rock, their steps ascending toward the sky. They are not rough piles of stone, but precise, terraced constructions with clear astronomical alignments. On the summer solstice, if you stand on the platform of the main pyramid, you can watch the sun set in a perfect double alignment, first behind the peak of another mountain, and then as you descend the staircase, it sets again. This is sophisticated, intentional design, but who built them? Some argue they are simply terracing built by 19th century farmers clearing their fields, a common practice in the Canaries. Others see the hand of the Guanches themselves, a monumental project that hints at a complex understanding of the cosmos that contradicts the simple image presented by early European accounts. The debate over the pyramids is a microcosm of the larger Guanche mystery. Were they a simple, isolated people, or did they possess a lost cultural sophistication that has been erased by time and conquest? Their true story is a tale of a voyage forgotten, a seafaring legacy that vanished into the sea mists, leaving behind only silent stone structures that guard their secrets as fiercely as the ocean that kept them hidden for so long. The Mediterranean floor near Libya holds another city that answered the ocean's slow call. Apollonia was the vibrant seaward heart of a powerful Greek colony, the bustling port for the inland capital of Cyrene. Founded in the 7th century before the Common Era, this was where the agricultural wealth of the highlands met the wider world. Ships laden with grain, olive oil, and the precious medicinal herb silphium would have crowded its harbor, their sails a constant sight along this fertile coast. For centuries, Apollonia was not just a dockyard, but a thriving urban center in its own right, complete with public baths, a grand theater, and sturdy defensive walls that spoke of its importance. Its fate, however, was written not in fire or war, but in the deep, patient movement of the earth itself. The entire coastline here is slowly sinking, a gradual tectonic subsidence that has been ongoing for millennia. This was not a single, dramatic collapse, but a relentless, inch-by-inch descent that played out over hundreds of years. The people of Apollonia would have witnessed the sea's slow advance, perhaps building new walls or raising foundations in a futile attempt to hold back the inevitable. One by one, the city's structures closest to the water were claimed. The very quays where merchants once haggled now lie several meters beneath the surface, their stone blocks home to corals and swaying seagrass. The foundations of Roman villas and early Christian basilicas are clearly visible on the seabed, their floor plans outlined against the sandy bottom like blueprints for a drowned world. This creates an archaeological site of breathtaking clarity, where you can swim over the main colonnaded street and gaze down at the ruins of a monumental building complex known as the Palace of the Ducks. The subsidence that sank Apollonia also preserved it, protecting its lower levels from the looting and rebuilding that often destroy ancient cities on land. The silence here is profound, broken only by the sound of your own breathing as you float over a city that gently, peacefully, returned to the sea from which its prosperity first flowed. The map of Southeast Asia is a modern illusion, a scattered puzzle where the pieces were once locked together. During the last great ice age, a vast continental shelf lay exposed to the air, a lost world geologists call Sunderland. This was not a minor land bridge, but a sunken continent in its own right, a sprawling lowland larger than India that connected the islands of Java, Borneo, and Sumatra directly to the Asian mainland. Where the Java Sea now churns, there were rolling grasslands, river valleys, and dense forests, a landscape that served as a superhighway for early human migration. This was the route that led our ancient ancestors, groups like Homo erectus, out of Asia and into the far reaches of Indonesia over 1 million years ago. The coastal plains of this lost land would have been ideal environments for human settlement, offering rich marine resources, fertile soil, and abundant game. It is a near certainty that the shores of this Ice Age continent were dotted with the camps and villages of these early peoples, their lives woven into a landscape that no longer exists. Then the world warmed. As the glaciers retreated, their meltwater fueled a relentless global rise in sea levels. The ocean did not simply flood Sunderland, it dismantled it. The rising waters crept inland century after century, drowning the great river systems and transforming the vast plains into a shallow sea. The highest points of the land, the hills and mountains, were left isolated, becoming the thousands of islands that form the modern Indonesian and Philippine archipelagos. This was not a sudden event like a tsunami, but a slow-motion cataclysm that unfolded over generations. The people living on Sunderland's coasts would have witnessed a terrifying, unstoppable retreat, watching as their hunting grounds, their freshwater sources, and their ancestral homes were gradually swallowed by the salt tide. They were forced to move again and again, fleeing to ever higher ground until only the mountain peaks remained. Entire chapters of human prehistory, the stories of cultures that adapted to this vast, connected continent, were lost beneath the waves. The drowning of Sunderland is more than a geological story. It is a profound human tragedy. It forces us to ask what evidence of our deepest past now lies on the submerged continental shelf, waiting on the seabed to be discovered. Could the origins of seafaring in this region lie in those desperate attempts to adapt to the rising waters, to build rafts and boats to navigate the new, expanding seas that were consuming their world? The lost land of Sunderland is a ghost that shaped the destiny of millions, its sunken shores holding the untold stories of the very first people to call that part of the world home. The gentle Mediterranean currents now guard a city of healing turned to stone and silence, while its more famous namesake drew the sick and the hopeful to the sanctuary of Asclepius. The coastal city of Epidaurus built its fortune on the sea. This was a working port, a hub of commerce where the practical business of maritime trade funded the grandeur of the inland temples. Its sturdy walls embraced a bustling community of merchants, sailors, and artisans, their lives dictated by the rhythm of the tides and the arrival of goods from across the Aegean. You can still walk along the modern shoreline and see the ghost of its prosperity lying just beneath the surface. The foundations of ancient buildings descend into the clear, blue water, their lines blurred by seaweed and the slow dance of small fish. A submerged road, its stone paving still visible, seems to invite you to follow its path into the deep, a phantom thoroughfare leading to a vanished marketplace. Further out, the skeletal remains of the city's breakwater and harbor moles create an artificial reef, a stark reminder that human ambition is no match for planetary forces. The cause of this submergence is written in the very land itself. This region of the Peloponnese is a shattered puzzle of fault lines, a place where the Earth's crust is constantly, restlessly shifting. It was likely not one single cataclysmic earthquake, but a series of them over centuries that caused the land to drop in a process known as tectonic subsidence. Each major tremor would have jolted the city, causing sections of the coastline to sink a few more inches, allowing the sea to creep a little further inland. The citizens of Epidaurus would have witnessed this slow-motion disaster firsthand, repairing their shattered walls after each quake only to find their harbor a bit shallower, their waterfront homes a step closer to the waves. Did they simply accept this as the price of living in a seismically active paradise, or did a final, violent tremor deliver the decisive blow, plunging a significant portion of their city beneath the waves in a single, terrifying night? The silent stones offer no answer, but their presence beneath the water is a powerful testament to a thriving maritime community that now exists in two worlds, its story half on the land and half in the sea, forever waiting for the next shift of the Earth to reveal more of its secrets. The Goodwin Sands are a sailor's nightmare, a vast and ever-shifting graveyard of ships just off the coast of Kent. But local lore insists these treacherous shallows were not always here. They whisper of a lost island called Lomia, a fertile land of green fields and a manor owned by the powerful Earl Godwin. According to the legend, this entire island was catastrophically swallowed by the sea in the year 1099, its fields and forests replaced in a single night by the deadly quicksands that bear the Earl's name. The story is a perfect dramatic fable, a punishment for the Earl's sins or a simple act of divine caprice. Yet this legend, like so many others, is likely a poetic explanation for a much slower, more terrifying geological truth. The Goodwin Sands are not the ruins of a sunken island, but a massive sandbank resting on a solid platform of chalk. The real danger comes from their instability. Powerful tidal currents, some of the strongest in the world, constantly sweep through the English Channel, moving millions of tons of sand with each cycle. The sands can literally change shape overnight, revealing a safe passage at high tide only to conceal it with a new, impassable shoal a few hours later. A ship that anchors in deep water at dusk can find itself stranded on a newly formed sandbar by morning, left helpless as the tide recedes and the vessel capsizes onto its side. This is the genuine horror of the Goodwins, a landscape that is never the same from one day to the next. The legend of Lemuria gives this impersonal, geological danger a human face and a memorable story. It transforms a complex, ongoing process of erosion and tidal action into a single, understandable event. The tale provides a reason for the inexplicable danger, a moral for the countless sailors who have lost their lives on those sands. It is far easier to blame the greed of a long-dead earl than to accept the chilling reality of a shore that is never truly there, a coastline that is constantly rewriting itself in water and sand. The phantom island of Lemuria endures because it makes sense of the senseless, offering a story where the sea's chaos was once a solid, knowable world. The sunken staircases of Kakova descend into a turquoise dream. Along the Turkish coast, the ancient Lycian city of Dulkist sleeps in water so clear it feels like you are looking through glass. This is not a city shattered by violence, but one that seems to have gently settled onto the seabed, its daily life frozen in a moment of geological shock. An earthquake in the 2nd century of the Common Era likely caused the land to drop, and the calm Mediterranean waters flowed in, claiming the lower portions of the city without erasing its memory. Today, you can glide over the ruins in a small boat, peering down at the ghostly outlines of a civilization suspended between two worlds. The foundations of houses create a grid of stone on the sandy bottom, their walls now tracing the territories of darting fish. A solitary sarcophagus lies half-submerged, its lid slightly ajar as if waiting for a visitor who never returned. Most haunting are the staircases, their steps still leading purposefully downward, but now ending not in a cellar or a street, but in the open, sun-dappled water. They are a powerful symbol of a life interrupted, of errands left unfinished and conversations cut short. Kakova does not feel like a tragedy, but like a pause. It is a place that invites quiet reflection on the fragile line we draw between land and sea, and how quickly a thriving community can become a beautiful underwater museum, its story told not in words but in the silent language of sunken stone. Science once painted a phantom continent in the Indian Ocean to solve a biological riddle. The original Lemuria was not a myth or a spiritual vision, but a sober scientific proposal from the 1800s. Zoologists were puzzled by a peculiar fact. Fossils of lemurs, those wide-eyed primates, were found in India and on the island of Madagascar, but nowhere in between. How could these small, tree-dwelling animals have crossed thousands of kilometers of open ocean? The most logical answer for that time was that the ocean had not always been there. A land bridge must have once connected these far-flung lands. They named this lost world Lemuria, a sunken continent that allowed ancient life to walk from one shore to the other. For decades, this was a perfectly respectable, if unproven, theory, a placeholder on the map of deep time to explain a mystery of nature. Then came the tectonic revolution. The theory of plate tectonics revealed that the Earth's crust is not static, but a collection of giant, drifting plates. Madagascar and India were not torn apart by a sinking continent, but were passengers on two different plates that slowly, over millions of years, pulled away from each other. The lemurs were not stranded by a drowning land, but by a widening sea. their populations separated by the same geological forces that shape our planet's mountains and oceans. Lemuria, the scientific land bridge, was no longer needed, and it was quietly retired from the textbooks, but a phantom, once given a name, is difficult to banish. Just as the scientific theory faded, a spiritual movement called Theosophy breathed a new, more mystical life into it. Theosophical writers adopted the name Lemuria and transformed it from a simple land bridge into a vast, ancient continent, the home of a root race of humanity. In their elaborate cosmology, the Lemurians were a strange and wonderful people, egg-laying giants with a third eye and psychic powers, whose advanced civilization was lost when their continent sank beneath the waves. This new, mythical Lemuria captured the public imagination, far more than the dry scientific hypothesis ever had. It became a blank canvas for all manner of esoteric beliefs and alternative histories, a spiritual Atlantis in the Indian Ocean. This is the curious afterlife of a scientific idea, Lemuria's journey from a zoological explanation to a pillar of occult mythology shows us how easily the line between fact and fantasy can blur. It asks a profound question about our need for lost worlds. Do we create these phantom continents not just to explain the past, but to fill a void in our own imagination, to believe that a more magical, more advanced human story lies just beneath the waves, waiting to be remembered? While the sunken staircases of Kakova lead into a silent dream, another Greek port holds a treasure trove of color beneath its waves. Kenkrii served as the eastern harbor for the mighty city of Corinth, a vital gateway for ships crossing the Aegean Sea. This was not a minor dock but a bustling hub of commerce, where goods from across the Roman Empire flowed into one of antiquity's wealthiest cities. Its warehouses were packed with the luxuries that fueled Corinthian society, a testament to a maritime network of immense scale and sophistication. The true wonder of Kenkrii, however, lay hidden on the seafloor for nearly 2,000 years. In the 1960s, marine archaeologists began to excavate the submerged ruins, and what they found surpassed all expectation. The collapsed structures of the port held an extraordinary secret. As they carefully sifted through the sediment, they uncovered dozens of opus sectile panels. This was not mere mosaic work, but an art form of incredible luxury, where intricate pictures were created by cutting and fitting together thin slices of colored glass and stone. Imagine these panels as they were meant to be seen, not underwater, but gleaming on the walls of a wealthy Roman villa. They depicted scenes from philosophy and mythology, their vibrant blues, deep reds, and brilliant greens forming portraits of poets, gods, and literary scenes. These were not local crafts, but priceless imports, likely being stored in a portside warehouse awaiting transport to their final, lavish destination. Their discovery in the sea raises a poignant question. How did such fragile and valuable artworks end up on the seabed? The evidence points to a single, catastrophic event, most likely a powerful earthquake. One day, the ground shook with violent force. The stone piers and warehouses, weakened by the tremors, crumbled and slid into the harbor. The crates containing these exquisite glass panels were swallowed by the churning water, sinking into the soft mud that would both conceal and preserve them for centuries. It was a sudden, devastating loss for their owners, but an incalculable gain for history. These panels are a time capsule of ancient aesthetics and trade, a collection of art that would have otherwise been lost to the inevitable recycling and repurposing of materials over the ages. The sunken port of Kenkrii offers us a unique paradox, where a natural disaster that destroyed a thriving commercial center also acted as its ultimate preserver, locking a moment of unparalleled beauty in the silent, protective depths. The Bay of Bengal holds a story of a kingdom that vanished into its own shore. Local legends in Bangladesh speak of the island of Sara, a prosperous and fertile kingdom that thrived somewhere off the coast. It was a place of abundance, its people living in harmony with the water that surrounded them. Yet the folklore carries a familiar warning, a tale of human hubris and divine punishment. The people of Sarah grew arrogant, it is said, and in their pride they incurred the wrath of the gods. As punishment, the entire island was swallowed by the sea, vanishing without a trace beneath the churning waves. This powerful narrative of a paradise lost feels like a myth, but its origins may be written in the very mud of the delta. This region is the mouth of the Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers, one of the most active and dynamic deltas on the entire planet. It is a landscape in a constant state of flux, a place where the earth itself is alive. Every year, the rivers carry billions of tons of silt down from the Himalayas, depositing it into the bay. This sediment slowly builds up, forming new islands known as chars. These are not permanent lands, but temporary, low-lying creations of sand and mud. For a time, a char can be substantial, supporting vegetation, freshwater ponds, and even human settlements. A community could establish itself, believing it had found a stable home, building their lives on what they saw as solid ground. But the same forces that give life here can also take it away. The powerful tidal surges from cyclones, the relentless currents, and the sheer weight of new sediment can just as easily erode an island away. A thriving village could find its foundations literally washing out from under it, the land dissolving back into the water from which it came in a single violent storm season. The legend of Sarah is likely a cultural memory of this exact cycle. It is the story of a real, prosperous settlement that grew on one of these temporary islands. Its people would have experienced the bounty of the delta, the rich soil and abundant fishing, only to then face the terrifying power of its natural forces. A catastrophic storm surge or a period of rapid erosion could have erased their entire world in a short span of time, an event so traumatic it was seared into the regional consciousness. For those who survived, watching their home vanish into the sea, the only explanation that made sense was a divine judgment. The lost island of Sarah is a profound example of how geology becomes folklore. It is not a story about gods, but about the raw, untamed power of a planet that is constantly remaking its own coastline, and the human communities that must live with the knowledge that the ground beneath their feet is only on loan from the sea. The shallow, sun-drenched waters off Aegina hold the bones of a world that predates classical Greece by thousands of years. Here, beneath the surface, lie the foundations of a prehistoric village, a community that thrived at the water's edge during the final Neolithic period. This is not a city of marble columns, but a humble settlement of circular stone structures, their outlines still visible on the seabed like the ghostly footprints of a forgotten age. These simple homes, built for a life intimately tied to the sea, offer profound evidence of some of the earliest seafaring and trade in the entire Aegean. The story of this community is told through the artifacts they left behind. Archaeologists have recovered finely crafted stone tools, blades and scrapers made from obsidian, a volcanic glass that does not occur naturally on Aegina. The nearest source for this material is the island of Melos, a journey of over 100 kilometers across open water. This single discovery rewrites our understanding of ancient capabilities. It means that nearly 5,000 years before the Parthenon was even a dream, people were building boats sturdy enough for long-distance voyages, navigating by the stars and waves to establish trade networks that connected distant islands. They were not just islanders, they were seafarers. Alongside the tools, the pottery shards found on the seafloor reveal a society with both practical needs and an emerging sense of identity. The clay vessels used for storing food and water carry the distinctive decorative fingerprints of their makers. This was a community producing its own goods, developing its own cultural style, and engaging in a reciprocal exchange of goods and ideas with other emerging societies across the archipelago. Why did this village sink? The answer lies not in a single catastrophe, but in the slow, relentless rise of global sea levels. At the time this settlement was built, the shoreline would have been far further out. These circular houses were likely built on a low-lying coastal plain. Over the centuries, as the glaciers of the last ice age continued to melt, the Mediterranean crept inland, millimeter by millimeter, generation by generation. The people of this village would have watched the sea advance season after season until the day came when their homes were permanently flooded, forcing them to abandon their ancestral grounds to the waves. The submerged settlement of Aegina is a quiet but monumental chapter in human history. It shows us that the drive to build, to trade, and to connect across the water is not a product of advanced civilization, but one of its very foundations, a seed planted in the Neolithic mud that would one day blossom into the maritime empires of the ancient world. The same sea that guards the sunken ports of Greece also whispers a lament along the coast of Wales. Here, the legend of Cantreguelod tells of a magnificent low-lying kingdom, a fertile plain of 16 prosperous cities protected from the sea by a great dike and a series of sluice gates. It was a land of abundance, its fields yielding plentiful harvests, its people living in peace and wealth. The safety of this entire paradise, however, rested on the vigilance of its gatekeepers. The most famous telling of the tale points to a prince named Seithanin, charged with the crucial duty of closing the floodgates at low tide. One fateful night during a great storm and a lavish feast, Seithanin grew negligent. Whether he was distracted by the revelry or simply drunkenly forgot his task, the sluice gates were left open. The high tide, empowered by the tempest, rushed in through the unguarded defenses. The waters could not be stopped, and by morning, the kingdom of Cantreguelod was lost forever beneath the waves of what is now Cardigan Bay. The legend says that on a quiet day, you can still hear the mournful bells of its drowned churches tolling from beneath the sea. This story of a single human error leading to catastrophe is a powerful moral fable, yet it resonates with a deeper geological truth. The same coastal waters that hide the legend occasionally reveal its foundations. At extremely low tides along the Welsh shore, the stumps of ancient petrified forests are exposed from the clinging mud and sand. These are not random trees, but the remains of a vast, submerged woodland with fallen trunks and preserved peat beds stretching out toward the horizon. Scientific analysis confirms these forests are thousands of years old, dating to a time when sea levels were far lower, and this area was dry, fertile land, not a bay. Furthermore, archaeological finds in the region, such as primitive tools and the remnants of human campsites, confirm that this lost landscape was indeed inhabited. The story of the negligent Seithanin is likely a folk memory, a dramatic personification of a very real and gradual process. The people living on this coast would have witnessed the slow, inexorable advance of the sea over generations, watching as their hunting grounds and forests were swallowed. A particularly violent storm surge, breaching their own primitive sea defenses, could have been the final traumatic event that solidified the legend, compressing centuries of slow loss into a single night of terrible flooding and one man's fatal mistake. Cantreguelod stands as a poignant reminder that our oldest myths are often the most accurate histories, preserving the memory of a lost world in the haunting language of human fallibility and the relentless song of the tide. While the legends of Wales speak of a kingdom lost to a single night's neglect, the waters of the Black Sea hold a city whose submergence was a slow, undeniable certainty. Phanagoria was not a place of myth but the thriving capital of the Bosporan kingdom, a Greco-Scythian powerhouse built on the fertile Taman Peninsula. For centuries, this city was a critical bridge between the nomadic steppes and the sophisticated Greek world, its warehouses overflowing with grain, fish, and luxury goods destined for markets across the Mediterranean. Its power was anchored by the sea, a relationship that would ultimately define its fate. Today, a third of this great capital, including its vital harbor and vast necropolis, lies silent beneath the waves, a submerged district preserved in the Black Sea's unique oxygen-poor depths. Ongoing underwater excavations are methodically pulling back the curtain on this sunken world. marine archaeologists have mapped the ghostly outlines of the ancient harbors, breakwaters, and wharves, structures that once welcomed ships from Athens and Rome. They have recovered stunning artifacts from the seabed, from delicate Greek pottery to sturdy amphorae that once held wine and oil, each object a testament to the city's far-reaching trade networks. The most poignant discoveries come from the submerged necropolis, where tombs have yielded golden jewelry, finely crafted weapons, and inscriptions that speak of a society where Greek colonists and Scythian nobles intermingled, creating a unique and powerful cultural fusion. What forces could have claimed such a prosperous and strategically located city? The answer is a slow-moving drama of geological and environmental change. The very peninsula Phanagoria was built upon is unstable, subject to gradual tectonic subsidence that caused the land to sink inch by inch over the centuries. This natural sinking was compounded by a global partner in crime, the relentless rise in sea levels that followed the last ice age. The people of Phanagoria would have witnessed the water's inexorable advance, a creeping reality that forced them to continually adapt, rebuild, and eventually abandon their lowest-lying districts to the sea. This was not a catastrophic drowning, but a long-managed retreat, a slow-motion farewell to a waterfront that had been the source of their wealth and identity. The ongoing work at Phanagoria offers more than just a catalogue of lost treasures. It provides a breathtakingly clear window into the daily life and death of a cosmopolitan hub that once connected two worlds, its story now written in the layers of sediment and the silent stones of its drowned streets. Deep within the impenetrable rainforests of Honduras, a legend persisted for centuries among local peoples and tantalized explorers. They spoke of La Ciudad Blanca, the White City, a place of immense stone structures and unimaginable wealth, hidden by a jungle so dense it seemed to actively guard its secret. This was not a story of a city lost to the sea, but one consumed by the land itself, a terrestrial Atlantis veiled in vines and mystery. For generations, the search for this single, mythical metropolis drove adventurers to exhaustion, their machetes barely making a dent in the green wall that had swallowed an entire world. The truth, however, was far grander and more complex than any lone city. The breakthrough came from the sky, not from the ground. Archaeologists employed advanced LiDAR technology, a laser scanning system that can digitally strip away the forest canopy to reveal the contours of the earth below. What the scans uncovered was staggering. The legend of one white city was a profound understatement. The data showed a sprawling, interconnected landscape of human engineering. The images revealed vast urban centers, complete with large plazas, monumental earthworks, and a sophisticated network of roads and irrigation canals, all laid out across the river valleys. This was not a lone settlement, but the heart of a previously unknown civilization, a complex society that had managed the jungle, cultivated the land, and built on a scale that rivaled other great Mesoamerican cultures. The civilization, now often referred to as the City of the Jaguar God, appears to have flourished for centuries, reaching its peak perhaps 1,000 years ago before it was completely abandoned. Why did they leave such an elaborate and clearly functional habitat? The jungle holds that secret tightly. There is no evidence of a violent invasion or a sudden catastrophe. The leading theory points to a combination of social and environmental pressures. Perhaps a prolonged drought or a series of devastating diseases fractured the social order and made sustaining such a concentrated population impossible. The people may have simply dispersed, their descendants blending into other groups, their grand achievements left for the jungle to reclaim. One of the most compelling ongoing questions involves their connection to the wider world. These settlements are located far inland, along river systems that flow to the Caribbean. Were these rivers their highways? Did this civilization engage in maritime trade, exchanging jungle commodities like jade, feathers, and cocoa with seafaring cultures along the coast? The discovery of objects made from materials not native to the region in other pre-Columbian sites suggests such networks existed, but definitive proof within the Mosquisha ruins remains elusive. The silent, overgrown plazas challenge our map of the ancient Americas, suggesting a tapestry of human development far richer and more diverse than we ever knew, with its central knot still waiting to be untied in the green depths of Honduras. The same seismic unrest that claimed Heracleion and Canopus also dragged their sacred sibling into the deep. Manauthes was not merely a neighbor to these legendary ports, it was the spiritual anchor of the bay, a city entirely dedicated to the worship of the goddess Isis and the god Serapis. While Heracleion managed trade and Canopus hosted revelry, Manauthes thrived on faith, drawing pilgrims from across the Roman world to its renowned temples. This was a place of miracles and oracles where the sick and the hopeful came to seek divine intervention and receive sacred dreams from the gods. Its reputation as a center of healing and esoteric knowledge made it a beacon in the final, flickering centuries of pagan antiquity, a last bastion of the old gods before a new religious order swept across the empire. Yet today, its physical presence is the most elusive of the three. The central challenge for marine archaeologists in Abaukia Bay is untangling the wreckage of these three intertwined cities. They all sank for the same fundamental reason: the unstable, saturated clay of the Nile Delta simply gave way. When a powerful earthquake struck, the ground shook with such violence that the soil particles lost their cohesion, turning the solid earth into a liquid slurry in a process called liquefaction. The immense weight of the city's own stone temples and monuments then caused them to tilt, fracture, and sink into the self-created mire. The Mediterranean, ever patient, did the rest, flooding the sunken districts. But this shared catastrophe now creates a shared grave on the seafloor. The ruins of Manauthes, Heracleion, and Canopus are not neatly separated by fences or signs. Their scattered stones and artifacts intermingle across the seabed. How can we distinguish the Temple of Isis in Manauthes from a similar shrine in Canopus? The identification often comes down to the specific nature of the artifacts recovered. A statue of Serapis could be from any of them, but a concentration of ex voto offerings, small terracotta models of healed body parts left by grateful pilgrims, point strongly to the healing sanctuaries of Manauthes. Inscriptions dedicated specifically to Isis as a universal mother and magician help carve out its sacred territory from the more festive remains of its neighbors. Finding the lost city of Manauthes is therefore a delicate act of spiritual forensics, sifting through the physical evidence to reconstruct a world of profound faith. Its silent stones on the bay floor represent more than a sunken city. They mark the drowning of an entire way of seeing the world, a place where the divine was believed to touch the earth directly until the earth itself opened up and swallowed that belief whole. An island was born in fire and smoke in the summer of 1831. A volcanic eruption off the coast of Sicily thrust a new landmass from the depths of the Mediterranean, a black, steaming island of ash and pumice that grew to over 200 feet high. It was immediately christened Ferdinandia after the king of the two Sicilies, and its sudden appearance triggered an international incident. The British Navy, seeing its strategic value, landed and planted the Union Jack, renaming it Graham Island. The Spanish staked their own claim, while French scientists arrived to study the phenomenon, subtly suggesting it belonged to France. For a few frantic months, cartographers scrambled to update their maps, and diplomats argued over who would control this brand new piece of the world. Then, just as suddenly as it had risen, Ferdinandia began to dissolve. The loose volcanic tuff that formed its core was no match for the relentless pounding of the Mediterranean waves. Within 5 months of its birth, the island had completely washed away, sinking back beneath the surface and leaving behind only a shallow shoal. The flags, the diplomatic notes, the grand claims of sovereignty all became meaningless. The nations were left arguing over a coordinate in the ocean, a kingdom of water. Ferdinandia is a perfect modern snapshot of a process that has likely occurred countless times throughout human prehistory. Imagine a similar volcanic birth in the ancient Aegean or the South Pacific. A new island appears on the horizon, a black, smoking omen that slowly cools into a land of fertile soil. A group of bold seafarers lands on its virgin shore, establishing a small settlement, perhaps building a shrine to the powerful forces that created it. They lived there for a generation or two, their story becoming woven into the lore of their people. Then, the same geological forces that gave them land take it away. The island, unstable and eroding, slowly sinks back into the sea, forcing the settlers to flee. They return to their homeland with an incredible story of a lost island, a green paradise that the gods gave and then reclaimed. Over centuries, that story is told and retold, its details shifting until it becomes the legend of a sunken kingdom, a lost Atlantis or a phantom High Brasil. Ferdinandia proves that the raw material for these ancient myths is real. Our planet's crust is alive and restless, constantly creating and destroying real estate in the planet's greatest emptiness. How many of the 50 lost maritime civilizations we have explored began with a story just like this? A brief, tangible home that rose from the waves only to return to them, leaving nothing behind but a tale that would echo for 1,000 years. A shipwreck is a final, frozen moment in time. In the Java Sea, a 13th century vessel rests on the seabed, its wooden hull long since devoured by the sea, but its story perfectly preserved in the cargo it carried. This was not a small trading dhow, but a ship of immense capacity, a floating warehouse whose contents speak of an empire built on water. When archaeologists recovered its artifacts, they found a staggering treasure, not of gold and jewels, but of commerce. The hold was packed with tens of thousands of Chinese ceramics, from delicate celadon bowls to sturdy storage jars, alongside blocks of resinous incense and tons of iron for forging tools and weapons. This single shipwreck is a ghost ship of globalization, a testament to a trade network of breathtaking scale that connected the workshops of China to the markets of Southeast Asia and beyond. But what civilization had the power to coordinate such wealth, to protect the sea lanes and command the flow of such immense cargo? The answer points toward a phantom empire, the Srivijaya Maritime Kingdom. For centuries, Srivijaya was the undisputed master of the strategic Strait of Malacca, the narrow funnel through which all trade between China and India had to pass. Its power was not held in grand inland temples, but in its control of the coastal ports that dotted Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula. Historical records describe these ports as bustling, cosmopolitan hubs where goods were taxed, transshipped, and stored. Yet today, finding the physical heart of this thalassocracy has proven nearly impossible. Where were its great capital cities? The same force that preserved the shipwreck may hold the key to this mystery. The relentless rise in sea levels since the last ice age has dramatically reshaped this entire region. The low-lying coastal plains and river deltas where Srivijaya would have built its ports and administrative centers are now submerged beneath the shallow waters of the Java Sea and the Strait of Malacca. The very capitals that controlled this vast network may now lie just offshore, buried under layers of silt and sand, their wooden structures long dissolved but their stone foundations and priceless artifacts waiting to be found. This ship, then, is more than a collection of sunken goods. It is a compass needle pointing to a lost world. The sheer volume of its cargo suggests a level of economic organization and maritime security that could only be maintained by a powerful, centralized authority. Each ceramic bowl was an item in a massive economic system, each block of incense part of a cultural exchange that stretched across thousands of miles of ocean. The wreck forces us to ask a haunting question. Are we underestimating the sophistication of these Southeast Asian kingdoms because their greatest achievements, their port cities, are currently being curated by the sea? The Java Sea shipwreck is a messenger from a drowned world. Its cargo manifest a silent poem to the power of empires that now exist only in fragments, their history written on the ocean floor. Beyond the turquoise lagoons of Mauritius lies a secret written in the ocean's depths. The Mascan Plateau is a sunken giant, a vast underwater plateau larger than many European nations, its highest peaks alone breaking the surface to form the islands we know today. For the most part, this is a realm of twilight, a submerged world of seamounts and sandy plains lying thousands of feet beneath the waves. Yet during the last great ice age, this was a dramatically different place. With sea levels hundreds of feet lower, a significant portion of this plateau would have been dry land, a sprawling microcontinent some geologists have named Mauritia. Picture not just a few scattered islands, but a continuous, verdant landscape of rolling hills, freshwater rivers, and coastal plains, a land bridge connecting the scattered fragments of the modern Mascan Islands. This was not a mere sandbank, but a potentially habitable world, a lost continent in the Indian Ocean. The very idea ignites a profound question. If this land existed for thousands of years, could it have been a stepping stone for the earliest human expansions across the Indian Ocean? We know the Austronesian peoples were master navigators, crossing immense distances in their outrigger canoes. Could a few of their vessels, blown off course or deliberately exploring, have made landfall on the shores of Mauritia? The possibility, while speculative, is tantalizing. They might have established temporary camps, hunted the unique fauna that surely evolved in that long isolation, and left behind the faintest traces of their presence. The challenge, of course, is that any evidence now lies under crushing depths and layers of marine sediment. The search for proof is a monumental task, like looking for a single lost coin on a dark ocean floor the size of a country. Yet the geological evidence for Mauritia itself is compelling, born from the same tectonic forces that broke up the ancient supercontinent of Gondwana. This lost land is a ghost in the machine of plate tectonics, a remnant of a world that was. It forces us to wonder how many other such microcontinents, now drowned and forgotten, once provided rest and refuge for ancient mariners, their stories forever sealed beneath the very waters that first brought them there. The story of Doggerland is not an isolated tragedy, but a template for loss across an entire sea. The North Sea itself, a tempestuous body of water that separates Britain from the European mainland, was once a sprawling, inhabited continent. While Doggerland was its heartland, countless other Mesolithic communities thrived along its river valleys and marshy coastlines, a forgotten world we are only now beginning to map. Every day, the sea gives up fragments of their story, not through careful excavation but by chance. Fishing trawlers dragging their nets across the seabed have become accidental archaeologists. Their hauls are a time capsule of a lost ecosystem. Alongside cod and sole, they bring up the bones of long-extinct creatures. The mammoth's immense tusk, the skull of a woolly rhinoceros, the antlers of giant elk that once roamed these grassy plains. But it is the human artifacts that truly bring this world to life. A finely chipped flint arrowhead designed for hunting those great beasts, a sharpened antler pick used for digging or building. A carved bone spear point smoothed by the hand of its owner. These are not the treasures of kings, but the everyday tools of a people intimately connected to their land. Each object dredged from the murky depths is a voice from a world that has been silent for 8,000 years. This was not a barren wasteland, but a rich and varied landscape of rolling hills, forested valleys, and extensive lagoons, supporting a population that likely numbered in the thousands. They were hunter-gatherers, yes, but they were also masters of their environment, following the migrations of game and the seasonal abundance of the coast. Theirs was a world in slow-motion collapse as the glacial meltwaters from a warming planet caused sea levels to rise relentlessly, century after century. The final act for many of these North Sea communities likely came not with a slow flood, but with a sudden, terrifying blow, perhaps a storm surge of unimaginable force that breached the last remaining high ground, or a localized tsunami that scoured entire valleys clean. The relentless waves did not just drown a landmass, they erased the home of thousands of people, their cultures, their languages, and their stories, leaving behind only scattered stones and bones to whisper of their existence. How many other coastal heartlands, just like this one, now lie at the bottom of the world's seas, their entire human history waiting to be rediscovered in the nets of a fisherman? From sunken cities to phantom islands and entire submerged continents, the sheer scale of this lost world is almost beyond comprehension. We have walked through the drowned streets of Pavloptri and traced the outline of a kingdom swallowed by the North Sea. We have listened to the echoes of legends like Lyonesse and Lemuria, finding the seeds of geological truth within their poetic laments. These were not isolated incidents, but a recurring story written by the relentless forces of our planet. A common thread binds them all, a fragile relationship between humanity and the water's edge. Time and again, we see civilizations flourishing through maritime ingenuity, only to be humbled by the very element that gave them life. The triggers were varied: a sudden earthquake shattering a port, a slow creep of silt choking a harbor, or the patient, unstoppable rise of the global ocean itself. Yet within these tales of loss lies a profound testament to human resilience. The people of Doggerland retreated before the advancing waves, the Lapita voyagers sailed into the unknown to find new homes, and the citizens of Apelli adapted for generations as their city slowly sank. Their stories are not just about endings, but about the enduring will to survive and the courage to begin again. This hidden history beneath the waves is more than a catalogue of ruins. It is a mirror reflecting our own precarious present. As sea levels continue to shift today, the fate of these 50 lost worlds serves as a powerful reminder of the delicate balance we must maintain with the ocean. Their silent stones ask us to look closer at the waters that cover our planet, to listen more carefully to the old stories, and to support the explorers, both professional and amateur, who peer into the deep. For the ocean's greatest secret may not be a single sunken city, but the countless other mysteries still waiting in the abyss, their stories resting just out of sight, ready for the next curious mind to uncover them.